Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and bring this meeting of Templeton Community Services District Board of Directors to order. Today is February 17th. It's 6 o'clock. We'll be starting our closed session. So roll call, please.
Sonic,
Here.
Logan is absent, Mortensen,
Here.
Peterson is absent, and Tyrone. Here.
And just for the record, Directors Peterson and Logan are actually just abstaining from this portion of the meeting. They plan to attend, but they own property within 500 feet of the parcel that we're going to discuss in closed session.
Okay, great.
So that's why they just.
Okay, great. All right, let's go to public comment on the closed session item. Any public comment for the closed session item? There are no public comments. Okay, we will close that section and adjourn to closed session. Let's go ahead and start our Templeton Community Services District Board of Directors meeting, regular meeting. Today is February 17th at 6:30. We just had a closed session and there is nothing to report out of our closed session. Let's go ahead and do roll call, please.
Directors Fardonish.
Here.
Logan. Here. Mortensen.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
And Tyrone. Here.
Okay, let's please stand for pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please have a seat. Order of business. Do any of the board members would like to change the order of business? Our agenda. All right, special reports. Let's go ahead and we have the sheriff and CHP. Wonderful. Okay, let's start with the sheriff's department, please.
Good evening, Sandra Raza, Commander for the Sheriff's Office Defense Station. The stats for last month are the following. To year, we have 354 total calls for service. Last year, we were at 333. For this year, we are up to 54 reports, where last year at this time we had 56. We took one report for assault and battery, one for disturbance, 2 theft reports, one for vandalism, none for trespassing, no scam reports taken. And we did have 17 calls for service for suspicious circumstances in which 3 reports were taken.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? From public, any questions? Great, thank you. Oh, okay. Do we have the representative from Templeton Unified Schools here? No? Okay. All right. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's see if he's on the phone. Let's go ahead to public comment. Members of public may address the board on any items of interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. In compliance with the Brown Act, the board cannot discuss or act on items not on the agenda. However, board members or district staff members may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by the public. Are there any public comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you available?
I am, please. Sorry about that last minute interruption. It's actually good for the community here.
Oh, okay.
Let me share that.
Go ahead, CHP.
It's weather related, so let me just share real quick. That was the County OES Director, Scotty D'Albert. He just wanted to share that the National Weather forecast is showing there's high potential for tornado warnings in the North County here from Cayucas over with major downside, which we obviously experience as we walk in here. There is certainly a lot of lightning going on, so just be cautious of the current weather events while we're here.
Thank you.
For Templeton CHP, I'm the commander for Templeton here based down the road. My name is Darren Januso. I'll just report January statistics. Total crashes investigated from January 26 compared to last year, 2025. There were 10 crashes, which is equal to the last year. 8 were for property damage only. 3 were on the highway, 5 on county roads. 2 of those were injury related. There was 1 DUI related crash, that was on a county road. And no fatalities, fortunately. Total of 118 enforcement contacts, which resulted in 79 citations being issued. 64 were on the highway, 15 on county roads, 17 was for speeding. And there were 3 total DUI arrests, 1 on the highway and 2 on county roads. Current events for Templeton CHP that affects Templeton. Some of the large turnouts and areas that you may have been seeing, various vehicles being parked, sometimes for sale or maybe which look to be abandoned vehicles. We've had community calls between here and actually San Miguel's another community about vehicles that seem to be left for a long period of time unaddressed. So we've been sending officers and sergeants out to address these abandoned vehicles or vehicles that sit beyond the length of the county ordinance. What that says is that no vehicle can sit stationary for more than 72 hours without any movement. If a highway patrol puts a tag, we call that a CHP 422 is a form, bright yellow sticker. It's usually prominently displayed on the exterior of the vehicle, back window, or maybe the license plate. That's just for a warning to say that the vehicle needs to be moved within 72 hours, and if not, then it can be impounded for a county ordinance. And that would be at the owner's discretion to impound it. All it needs to do is move within, I believe it's a quarter of a mile or 500 feet. Not a big distance, I know. Quarter mile, but this needs to be moved. The complaints that we had for Templeton, we did receive response that was positive, saying we handled the issue, and I have not heard anything else. So if the community sees anything or has any concerns, please contact the CHP office and we'll try to address that. With that, I am open for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, there, any questions? Yes.
I'm curious, what phone number do we use for CHP? It's not 911.
If it's an emergency, feel free to call 911. Drunk drivers, erratic driving, suspicious circumstances, that certainly rises to a 911
But
call.
like the abandoned vehicles?
Abandoned vehicles for the business line, 805 is the area code 400-6720.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had a question for you.
Yes.
We live right off of Vineyard and, it's too fast. Is there any way to lower that, or is it like a big thing to get it down to 35 at least?
So the answer to those questions are yes to both. Can it be done? Yes. Will it be done? Depends. Speed limits are set by Public Works. County engineering does that for county roads. They follow guidelines. And if there are problem locations, this is a great way they can come to our attention. I meet with the Public Works Director often. In fact, these are one of the things that they ask us to bring forward from the Highway Patrol. If there's any roads that need particular attention, please let them know. They can reevaluate that. That is a very long process because there are many county roads that are always reassessed for speed limits. Going down is not very common. Sometimes they go up. What they do is there's a long process, but they do something called like an 85th percentile, where they actually monitor with engineers traffic. Believe it or not, it's actually kind of a wonky system. When 85% of the cars drive at a certain speed, that usually sets a new speed limit. So everybody drives 100 miles an hour. Yeah, it's really dated. There's actually good data on this nationwide about how antiquated that system is and how there's other methods. But currently, I see no change in county policy or state policy of that method. But because you brought it up, I will send an information to the engineers. I'll even ask my staff to see if they notice any peculiar driving. May just be time of day or perspectives, but we need to really gather data for that. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that location with me, I'll write it down now, and I'll leave a business card on the way out too that you can email the site.
So from Rossi Road to
Yeah.
Bethel.
On Vineyard?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's certainly on our list. It's probably one of the most common roadways that I hear complaints on.
Yes.
In fact, you've probably seen our radar sign
Yes.
out there recently or in the months past because of these concerns. So I'll bring that up again. In fact, in a community walk that I personally did with SlowCog, this jurisdiction, this board and TAG, actually both, There was a slow safety walk that was done in February of 25 last year, if you're aware of that. And it was actually that specific stretch of road was one of the points of, in fact, Rossi, is that Trader Joe's driveway
Yes.
right there? That was actually, that intersection was also discussed. If I can mention that because it is a Templeton issue.
Yes.
That parking area right west of Rossi between Bethel says park parallel only, which nobody does. I have frequent conversations with Public Works on that, and I've asked for design changes or barriers being implemented to curtail that parking. In
Yeah.
other words, when they don't park parallel, it causes blind intersections for traffic flowing out. There is a, as you know, development plan that's going in that's on their radar for changing that. But that's 2 years out, so I did ask for immediate changes now. And is literally, I have a meeting with them next month in March for follow-up. But I messaged that parking issue and speed with them for 3 months straight of fourth quarter last year. But I will follow up on the speed again just to see. And I can email the board that
Thank you.
information if I'm not here to report. Okay. And I believe it's a speed limit there, 40 miles per hour.
45.
Yeah, so it's like 60 for average, right? We do patrol it often, but it's just one of the roads that has a speed limit.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, appreciate it. All right, so back to the public comment, I already went over that, and then I also want to mention that there's a 3-minute time limit, so please keep it short. All right, that first comment, any public comment? Oh, all right, go ahead, gentleman in the front, and please, yeah, the podium and state your name, thank you for the record.
Good evening, board members. My name is Mike Manchak. I'm a longtime resident of Templeton, and I'm here in strong support of continued and reliable funding for our community's first library in recent years. The library is far more than a building with books, as we all know. It is one of the few remaining public spaces where every person, regardless of age, income, and background, is welcome. It serves as a place where children can learn to read, students needing quiet study space, which is quite rare around here, and then job seekers accessing computers, seniors looking for connections, and then families seeking educational enrichment. For Templeton, this library represents something historic. It's our first for most of us in the community. This matters. It matters because it signals that we are a community with values about education, literacy, and civic engagement. With the CSD or the CSD's area, and I have some maps that I've obtained from the library staff to provide to you when I'm done here. But this boundary that we're speaking of is 3,000 customers. These residents generated $318,000 in property taxes for library services just in 2024. Templeton's library annual expenses are under $85,000 a year for one employee and 30 volunteers. I think the number of volunteers speaks loudly about the support for that. However, its budget proposal for operation by the CSD includes wages for 3 part-time employees and is $135,000 per year. These are statistics that I've gotten from the library, leaving overhead costs of $180,000 for staff and administration. Libraries strengthen property values, something we don't think much about. They also support local schools and create a stronger community. They provide resources for youth and engagement for adults. And at a time when so much information is digital and communities are facing a high rate of disengagement that we've all read about, libraries provide access to reliable resources and human guidance. Lastly, if we want Templeton to continue as a thoughtful, educated, and connected community, we must invest in the institutions that make that possible. And the library is certainly that. A library is fundamental infrastructure, just like roads and water. But for the mind and the civic life in our town, it's really vital. So I'll end with that, but I want to thank you and please prioritize this funding for the library. That's very important. Thank you. And I'll hand out the maps if I could, please.
Just to clarify any confusion, TCF doesn't have any control over the funding. So that's something that the board of supervisors will need to decide on. So,
Thank you.
all right, next comment, Melinda, please come to the podium.
Thank you, Linda Reed, President of Templeton Library Association. And we knew that we were not on the agenda. We have been working with the county. The last time we were here in October, well, not the last time, but one of the times we were here in October of 24, TCSD had indicated that when they got information as to the amount of money that the county might be willing to part with, then they would consider possibly taking us on. The county has been working, we've been working with them on our request to them for our tax dollars. And it is, you're correct, obviously, you know it well, that the county has been collecting the tax dollars from the Templeton Community Services District area residents, as well as all of Templeton zip code, for 45 years after they closed our library. And they've been accustomed to bringing in those tax dollars and expecting that Templeton could use the other 14 branches, the Atascadero particularly. But we are, as a community, quite proud of the library that we have built. And 3 years of operation, we have a business plan that is obviously a flexible instrument that we would need to tailor to whatever the county is going to provide in funding. We've heard, not anything official, that possibly we might be negotiating some money, which we hope. We are hoping that our expenses, that how the library operates, we have a projected budget of about $185,000. That would be 3 part-time employees, but we do run with a committed group of volunteers. They are trained, background screened, and they are very involved in our storytelling and a lot of the programs and things that go on at the library. So we have business plan, SOPs, PNPs, all those good things. Templeton Community Services District doesn't have to build and create anything. We are looking forward to continuing this library in with your governance with the funds that we hope to bring to TCSD. So we wanted to make that clear. We would like to return our local tax dollars to TCSD for your governance, and we aren't going anywhere. TCLA and the volunteers that we have here are going to be here, and we hope that we are still going to be able to continue to do the programs and the things that we've created and create this partnership with you. The strategic goals that TCSD passed in May of last year include a couple of core values that we thought were kind of dealt with this situation, and that is knowledge, knowledge and teamwork. And we are committed to those as well. And I understand you're going to be celebrating your 50th anniversary here. Templeton Library would like to be a part of that. It would be a nice milestone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm gonna go with him, but we're gonna go.
Sure. That's wonderful.
Hello, Sarah Andress, Templeton resident, mom of 3 little kids, volunteer with the library, a regular user of our library. So I'm not going to say anything that everyone else has already said. He is going to speak to what it means to he and his 2 brothers about having our library. I just want to point out that as a property owner and how much I pay in property tax to fund 14 libraries that do not include our library is a punch to the gut. I mean, it's not cheap to live here. And we pay quite a bit to our county, which we don't mind. But to ask for a portion of what we pay to be redirected to the library that we use, knowing that we are kind of landlocked. My kids can't walk to Atascadero after school, and he's in middle school. There's no middle school aftercare programs in this town. My kids can't walk to Paso. not bus systems like there are in big cities that we are used to. So for us to have a local safe place to go is super duper important. And also, because we're not a city, the amount of money that comes back to our schools and our district isn't as old as the neighboring cities. So we have to fundraise hundreds of thousands of dollars for our schools just to operate our regular programs. I would love to put more money into our schools and less money into double paying for our library. I pay with my property taxes. I also pay at the year end, and anytime the library needs anything, my family we're right there. I'm right there for the black and white ball. I'm right there for the Templeton Meat and Grain. My husband and I both, we are right there with our money because we believe in community. We teach our children service above self. We want to lead as a family, and it is very important to us that the money we are already paying, a portion of it, a tiny portion, gets redirected back to the place that we call home, that we believe in so wholeheartedly, because we believe in helping everyone, not just ourselves.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alexander. Very well. I'm in sixth grade. And on behalf of me and my two younger brothers, I would like to say some key reasons why we like the Templeton Library. One, we love the Pokemon Club because of getting cards and making new friends and just like enjoying it with people. And two, the summer reading program, because it kind of just like makes me try to strive to read more. And then I love how kind and welcoming the volunteers are. I love it.
There's former TUSD teachers, there's grandparents, there's people's parents, there's junior helpers now, there's peers. It's pretty rad to walk in and build community where you feel welcome and safe.
And number 4, there's books for all interests of all levels. And yeah, so basically if I wanted like a history book for my book report, then I could totally just get that. And then for number 5, I have classmates that come every day after school to go for a safe place to go and just hang out until their parents are able to pick them up and so they can walk home. So yeah. And then it's also a very walkable place from school, the park, and my home. My brothers and I really love the Templeton Library. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Lois Lee. I'm a Templeton property owner as well as a Templeton Library volunteer. I'm asking that TCSD agree to administer a small portion of the taxes for library funds that Templeton property owners have already paid, not to give it to the other 14 county libraries that have been receiving it for 45 years, but to the Templeton Library itself. I just feel that this is wrong and needs to be corrected. The Templeton Library was built through a grassroots effort by the Templeton community members because they saw a need for a library within our local community, not in the neighboring towns of Tuscadero and Paso Robles, perhaps. The Templeton Library has successfully serviced our community for the last 3 years. It also provides a gathering place for students, book clubs, classes, story time, some speakers, and other community activities. Our efforts have provided a good start, but to continue to grow our facility, our patrons, and our book collections, we need a more consistent revenue stream. On our own, we have outperformed the other small libraries in the county in circulation, active patrons, and over 15,000 plus books in our collection, most of them donated by the community. Unfortunately, these successes are not sustainable, only through our donations and our 35 wonderful volunteers. It took 25 years of hard work and donations to build the library to what we have today. That's a long time. The future of our library is unpredictable. We must have a more consistent revenue source to continue. These funds are already allocated by law, but for the last 45 years, they have not come to the Templeton community, but to other county libraries. Not, not inside of Templeton, which is our community. We get nothing from the taxes that our Templeton taxpayers have paid for library services. This needs to change. We ask that you agree to act as a conduit for funding. I know the funding doesn't come from you, but from the county, 1.6% of our taxes for library services. Without your help, we cannot even apply for state and federal funding. We need to work together so that all Templeton residents, young and old, will have an accessible local library within our own community. We need your help. Your name says it all, Templeton Community Service District. Please vote to administer the library services funds for our library. It's a win-win for the entire community. You have nothing to lose and the community has much to gain. It's the right thing to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Comments?
Gwen Pelfrey, 39-year property owner in Templeton, a former member of the service district. And I'd like the service district to consider exercising your latent powers to operate a library upon knowing that the county is going to give Templeton a portion of what gets collected from the Templeton citizens. And the 93465 zip code or the school district boundaries, that is much larger than the service district boundaries. The $318,000 that was mentioned by other members is only the funds from the service district boundaries. And whenever you look at that map, those boundaries are much smaller than the greater area. And as you've also heard, the budget and monies being spent today are much less, even knowing that the staffing would be larger. The budget is still well within the $318,000, which is the 1.6% of property taxes that are mandated by the state to be used for libraries only. That funding isn't going away. So once it gets allocated by the Board of Supervisors, who's been using it for those other 14 libraries, it is a stable source of funds. So once again, I would hope that you could consider exercising those powers, because in order to receive the state collected funds, it does take an agency. It cannot be an independent 501c3 nonprofit as the library board is. They'll still be there to support with volunteers and leadership, but we do need that conduit to accept the stable funds. And I did notice that in your tentative agenda items, you're going to be looking at your strategic plan update tentatively on March 17th. It sounds like a great time to be thinking about a library. Oh, thank you.
Any other comments?
Good evening, directors. I'm Monica Schechter, and I've lived here in Templeton since 2001. And I don't want to repeat much of what's been said, but I'm interested in knowing how many of you have visited the library. Many of you had the opportunity. Great. Well, we're certainly biased that we think it's the gem of our town. And, you know, it's a shame that for 45 years, 2 generations or more of kids haven't had their local library here. I'm a volunteer. I'm one of the many well-trained volunteers, and we get to see firsthand every day, the joy of kids coming in with their parents or grandparents. One of the favorites is Tuesday's story time or Wednesday art with Annie. I work on Wednesday afternoons. And it's the highlight of my week, just seeing the community come in. It's a community center and there's so much potential. We've had local authors, guest speakers, professors coming in, and, we really would like to see this continue. In closing, I just want to say, if we give county control, they may keep our money and shut down our library again. Local control ensures accountability, responsiveness, and stability. And it does so at a fraction of the cost of returning to the county system. The community wants its library governed locally, protected from past patterns, and aligned with Templeton's values and needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Alright. Okay, I don't see anybody online. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming and making those comments. All right, let's move on to consent agenda. We have 3 items on there. We have the minutes from the meeting of January 20th, 2026. We have the treasury report from December 2025. And we have item C, which is resolution number 01-2026, which is CFD annexation number 17. Any questions or comments on those? No, okay. Any from the public? No? Okay, all right, I'll bring it back to the board. I'll entertain a motion if there are no further questions or comments to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
There hasn't been a motion made.
I thought he was making it. That's fine. Okay, so we have a first and second.
Directors Argonish,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Logan,
Aye.
Mortensen,
Aye.
Tyrone. Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. Okay, business item, first one is introduction of ordinance number 2026-1. Civil administrative citations and penalties for fireworks violations program. And I'm assuming, is that Chief or you?
Well, with this, we can all tag team this and.
We have our attorney.
Yes, David Hirsch is available on Zoom for this, and we didn't really rehearse how we go through this, but I'll start by just providing a little bit of background that in this past September, about 6 months ago, we held a meeting, a workshop on all things related to fireworks, and there were a couple of outcomes of that meeting. One of which was that the board directed the fire committee to work on enforcement mechanisms. And the fire committee met on several occasions during the fall. And we learned that we have the ability to enact a civil or an administrative penalty program whereby we could impose citations or fines for violations at a standard that is lower than or less than a criminal proceeding what a criminal proceeding would require. And we were directed by the fire committee to begin working on this type of a program. We then almost immediately thereafter learned that the county, because they've enacted a really the same kind of item that's before you for fireworks violations. So this is a relatively new law. I think you're all aware of that. It just came about in 2025, although there were no instances of citations or violations issued within Templeton during the 2025 Independence Day time period. There was a period of time last fall when there were some concerns that because the county had enacted such a civil penalties program, the district might be limited in the actions that we can take. Our legal counsel worked with county counsel and county staff, and we've come to the realization that provided our program mirrors the county's program and there are not conflicts between the programs, we should be able to proceed with developing the program. So really what's before you is a model or a mirroring of the county's administrative citations program for violations. And this has been briefed in general terms to the Fire and Emergency Management. This has been prepared since December, it's ready to go since December. But at the time, we had learned that the county might be making some amendments to the program, so we held off bringing this forward because again, we're trying to match the county's program for a couple of reasons. And just got wind of just last week that the county's amendments are pretty minor, or likely to be pretty minor. And so we can move forward. This item, because it's an ordinance, it would take an introduction tonight, second reading or approval or adoption at your next meeting, and then can take effect 30 days later. So you have a little time, but not a lot of time to have it in place before the July 4th time period. So that's kind of just by way of a little bit of background. The penalties are for the same types of violations as far as illegal fireworks as the county's program. It also includes this concept of a social host, so that if someone's having a party at their house, the owner or the resident of that party is responsible or can be held liable for these penalties if they're hosting a party and one of their guests lights off an illegal firework. So that's a little bit of the background. The one change that's a little different here is because we allow safe and sane fireworks. The use of safe and sane fireworks are they don't fall into the same category as illegal fireworks. The draft ordinance does still provide the opportunity or the ability for TCSD to impose a civil fine for violations of the safe and sane program, but those fine amounts will be limited to $100. And it would be our position that we would work with warnings and education for the type of safe and sane fireworks that we anticipate being in violation. For example, the community's become very accustomed to be able to light these off in the street or the sidewalk in front of their house, and that rule just changed. And probably nobody or very few people in Templeton know that yet. And so it's not our goal, certainly this first year, probably for several years, to be imposing civil penalties for those sorts of violations, safe and sane violations, but rather use education and warnings. But nonetheless, the ordinance does contain that ability. So we'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you have. I do want to just point out that this will be it's a significant challenge. Even enacting the ordinance gives us some new tools. This sort of civil administrative process, but there still has to be, solid evidence. The ordinance creates a due process for folks who receive a penalty to essentially appeal it to a hearing officer. And there is the ability of that person to further challenge the district's determination through the court system. So it's somewhat cumbersome, and those challenges we would anticipate being unique based on the circumstances of the alleged violation. Yeah, again, we're happy to answer any questions, and then again, Chief Peterson and David Hirsch, we've all been involved in the creating of this program.
All right, well, thank you for the report. I know you've been working hard on it, so I appreciate it. All right, you have a question? Right.
Yeah, the $100 fee for violations of the safe and sane, that's obviously something separate than the counties. Is that considered an issue that we would have an additional?
So it's not an addition. So what ends up happening is the county's program, if you resided in Creston,
Okay.
And you lit off a safe and sane firework in a community that does not allow them, the county's ordinance would allow the county to actually cite you for a $1,000 violation. Because all fireworks are illegal. The county's program carves out communities like Templeton that permit safe and sane fireworks. So I don't think it's in conflict, and you really have, it's proposed at a lower rate, but you have control. If you want to lower that further or change that fine amount, you could. And we don't see that as in conflict with the county's ordinance.
And then my other question is,
Again, did
Oh.
the attorney, did you want to make a comment, David?
Oh, no, what was just explained is correct. The county has a carve out for communities that have safe and sane fireworks, but they don't have any kind of penalty because if they were set off in areas that do not permit safe and sane fireworks, they would be illegal fireworks along with all the others.
and then my other question is under, the definition for social host. Letter C says it shall be unlawful for any person to be knowingly present as a spectator during an unpermitted fireworks discharge. And then D says essentially that except for the person who's committing the violation, anyone who's like resides at the property shall not be liable.
That's in common areas of a multifamily.
So like an apartment building or something?
Complex.
Okay.
Right.
And then, so it is unlawful for any person to be unknowingly present. Is there, letter C, what is the penalty there other than just language stating that you're?
Yeah, again, with regards to the penalty, we're going to, on Safe and Sane, do an education program up front, unless it's a complete violation and they're just being defiant.
Right.
But it'll be totally educational the next first couple of years. If they're in that area, it's gonna be educational.
Okay.
And we're gonna basically let everybody in that area know, we plan on creating flyers if the board adopts this and having handouts with the ordinance in it saying safe and sane fireworks are legal, but they have to be in a, private property area. And then, illegal fireworks are obviously illegal and they will be fined.
So this language is just basically say to remind folks that they're an accessory or participating in an unlawful activity, but it's not,
So
but we're not expecting.
essentially what we're
Cite
gonna
those
try and do
individuals?
is we're gonna have line of sight. We're not gonna be able to cite anybody, except for, with the social host program with, for example, Overwatch, which is the aerial program. That captures video, and then that goes to the actual property owner.
Okay.
In a situation like that where you have common space, it's a little more difficult. We're gonna have to identify the person. And so anybody associated with that, we're gonna educate them also, and maybe David could chime in, but we're not going to cite the associated people around it without finding out who the actual associated or who the actual person was that lit the firework.
Well,
And-
I mean,
and
I just
obviously-
want to clarify that, the draft ordinance before you this is modeled again directly after the county's program. But the way this reads is, again, if you are on your own, if you have a party at your house and a firefighter observes a firework coming off the driveway,
Right.
or even in the backyard, but it's clear that it can be identified, it came from that property, and we don't know who lit it off, the property owner or the resident, if it's a lessee, like a tenant, can be cited under the program without having to prove that resident lit the firework off. That's what the ordinance permits.
But let's say it's in the street, in a end of a cul-de-sac, you're now having to tie the person who lit that firework to one of the properties within that
So I
cul-de-sac.
think we're talking about two things here.
Yeah, two.
So a common area with
Yeah.
an apartment complex is one thing. We don't have a property owner per se, that will be identified. Am I correct in saying that, David? Okay.
Yes,
So-
that's correct.
Yeah, so with those, it's gonna be a little more difficult to identify a property owner to do bill directly. What the general manager is referring to is on single family private property. Those, if we identify a launch from that property, we see that launch, we're gonna make contact, an illegal firework, we're gonna make contact with the property owner and cite the property owner.
And then
And keep in mind that this is a civil process as opposed to a criminal process.
Right.
So we don't have to prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. we need to prove it by a preponderance of the evidence. And the observations of the firefighter or whoever is the witness that can testify in a hearing will be what will go toward making that level of proof to support a citation. But for the first year or two, this is also going to be more of an education process than anything else, and we're going to be feeling our way a little bit as far as how we implement it. There'll be some clear violations, and there'll be some that won't be that clear. And we did hear that the county had some issues with some citations where they did not secure uh, support from a hearing officer to uphold those citations, and those were factually based, and not because of some flaw in the ordinance from the information we got from the county counsel's office.
What I don't
Can
want,
we talk about this separately, like safe and sane fireworks and then what we're gonna do there? And then all the issues around that in terms of finding the person who's not complying with our ordinance?
you wanna
And
break
then
it out?
talk about
Illegal?
illegals separately, because I'm assuming we're gonna handle them differently.
Yes.
So because I would say illegals, I wouldn't say it's a, illegal fireworks, we're gonna do an education.
No, but what
Yeah.
I wanna make clear is, and I've done this a lot, with regards to these administrative citations. The evidence that the attorney's talking about is, it's not a preponderance, but it's the ability to say, yes, I saw that launch from there, that property. Well, how do you know it wasn't the property directly behind it? And then you've got to be able to justify, well, because I saw XYZ take place, or, I saw the person walk out with the tube in his hand, or something along those lines. So to be able to testify to those things in the administrative hearing is important. And I wouldn't want our personnel to write a bunch of citations that get overturned like what took place with the county. So I want good factual evidence that they can state, we saw this get lit from this property, and there's no conflict that it would be some other property or some other circumstance that could get it dismissed.
And that goes with both the safe and sane and the illegals.
Either or, yes, correct. But particularly the illegals, because in my opinion, we'll have a zero tolerance policy. I just want to make those stick. So I don't want them to make assumptions it came from that property when they're down the block. No, I want it clear that we were positioned out in front of 1,000 Los Tablas. And there isn't a property behind 1,000 Los Tablas except for their backyard, and we saw the launch from their backyard.
Understood.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that we're going after,
Correct,
the illegals.
yes,
And those are the ones that have $1,000 fine.
correct.
That 65% of that fine goes back to the state.
No, only if we confiscate it.
Oh, only if you compensate
Confiscate the
the
fireworks.
Oh, those go back to the state.
If we confiscate the firework, then we have to give 65% of that fee back to the state for destruction.
Like, that doesn't make sense.
I fully agree.
Yeah, it's based upon a statute that's very specific as far as fireworks, illegal fireworks, and agencies that have civil penalty ordinances such as this, where the fireworks are seized, then 65% goes to the state. Yeah, yes, it doesn't make sense, but that's what the statute says. It's in the health and safety code.
So what I can tell you though, is the amount of confiscation that we do annually is not significant.
Yeah, but it's almost a deterrent to even confiscate any of them.
Agreed.
Because if you know that part of your fine, you're better off just fining and leaving them with the illegal fireworks.
Well, again, what we run into is when we approach a property, we'll ask, okay, who let it off, that type of thing, an illegal one. They'll notify us, well, that was our last one. Well, we don't have the ability to come in and search.
Yeah.
Okay, so at that point, all right, that was the last one, but you're still receiving $1,000 fine for igniting an illegal firework.
How many of those fines can you issue in a night
Yeah.
to the same person?
Oh, it's per occurrence.
Per occurrence.
Per
Per occurrence, but I do wanna, I wanna create, reasonable expectations here, and that is, I mean, it would be my goal that in 2025, there are at least some
Illegal.
penalties, issued, and in a case that can be upheld. But I do not want anyone to think that we're gonna be able to issue violations for every
That's understood.
occurrence. And there will be occurrences that we observe that we don't have enough evidence to identify the person who lit it, and so those are also not, you know, they're likely to be, you know, sort of got away with them. But if we're able to get at least a few to be issued and to stick,
Message.
we'll begin to change the culture in terms of, is there a
We-
consequence for?
We have the ability for the park. Those are related, yes.
Well, I'm working with the county to potentially shut the
Secure
park
it.
down that evening. Completely vacant.
Occurrence means, so like. You go out or you observe firework at a property, that's one. Even if they have like 5 illegal fireworks, that's still one occurrence.
No, so per occurrence, if we're down the street
Uh-huh.
and we look at a driveway
Uh-huh.
and we see the person light that firework, and as we're walking towards them, light another one
Got it.
and another one, well, that's 3 violations, that's 3 occurrences right
Got it.
there.
And the same thing, if we have aerial, surveillance, like from a drone
Right,
or
yeah.
or aircraft, and there's a recordation, and we can identify the property or the location of multiple, uses of fireworks, each one of those is a separate occurrence.
Right. And then the same thing would go per occurrence for the $100 violation of the safe and sane. I mean, I know we're focusing on education, but the
Right.
idea is still like occurrence based.
Correct, yeah.
So you're working with the county to close the park since they're illegal in the park.
That would be my recommendation, that all fireworks, even the safe and sane fireworks, are illegal in the park.
Because
We don't have.
They're already in ordinance? Both the county's ordinance and
Just gonna enforce.
the district's fire code.
We don't, yeah, we don't have any control over shutting down the
Yeah.
county park.
Yeah,
So,
understood.
yeah,
But I think that if the county has an ordinance that says that fireworks, safe and sane fireworks of any fireworks being lit off in the park are illegal, then that needs to be enforced.
Even our ordinance now says, because
Yeah.
it's,
Parks.
it was, says
And
public.
you don't have-
But we don't have jurisdiction over the county park.
So,
correct, we don't have
So,
jurisdiction.
well, I guess if your question is, if this ordinance is in effect, could we issue a violation, civil penalty for a violation in the county park? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
However, we wouldn't be able to base it on the ownership of the park like you can a piece of private property. So we'd have to actually identify the person who lit off the firework and get their contact information in order to process the violation. That goes for a safe and sane or an illegal firework. And again, my expectation is initially, because our community has created this well-established habit of coming to the park, coming to streets to let off safe and sane fireworks, that will be education only unless we have, again, persons who are just absolutely defiant or refuse to stop utilizing the safe and sane fireworks.
It'll be my direction to my staff that they only cite, except for what we get from an aerial program or something like that, if we go that route, on those instances where they visibly see a launch that they can attest to that property or it coming from that property, or they actually see the person lighting that illegal firework.
So earlier, a little bit ago, you asked a question about what if somebody were to light off an illegal firework in a cul-de-sac and that was observed, but we couldn't pinpoint which home the party was going to. And that's a case, actually, that was utilized, that was an example that was shared at a committee meeting where in the county's case, they were unable to uphold a violation because they made the assumption that the person who lit up the firework was associated with a with a party that was being held at a neighboring address. And that was proven to be insufficient, at least in the judgment of the hearing officer in that particular case. So again, we'll need to be careful about the amount of evidence that we're able to produce in order to sustain the violations. If we issue, let's just say 5 violations and all of them are overturned, we really haven't accomplished a whole lot.
And that's not just illegal fireworks in a cul-de-sac, it would be safe and same as well, since our ordinance says not a public property.
Correct.
Which would include streets.
Right. Again, stating that we are going to walk into the cul-de-sac on a safe and sane instance and hand out flyers going, you've got to move this back to your property.
And is $100 enough? I mean, it just seems like, I mean, I know it's gonna be education at this point. But, well, I don't think $100 is the maximum.
So we're talking about safe.
Max on the safe.
David, can you clarify that that's, the board has they can set that limit up to $1,000?
We're setting it in the ordinance, so if we want a different amount, we would have to put it in the ordinance.
It'd have to be done. Another,
yeah.
But you could adjust that now because it doesn't conflict with the county's ordinance because they don't have a safe and sane.
They don't have an amount.
Yeah, they don't deal with safe and sane violations separately.
These are violations that are violations of the district's code or misdemeanors, and from a criminal standpoint, they're subject to up to $1,000 fine. Rarely happens, but there is that provision in state law and in the district's code too. So it could be more than 100. We just thought with safe and sane, it would be a different situation than illegal fireworks.
But
and a
for
lesser
safe
amount
and
would be
sane,
appropriate.
but David, for safe and sane fireworks, we could have the fine larger than $100.
Yes, we could. We should state it in the ordinance.
Yeah.
So just food for thought, in Atascadero, their administrative ordinance goes $100, $250, and $500. And it's graduated. So yeah, you can.
For safe and sane fireworks?
No.
Oh.
That's just a administrative citation.
Oh, for administrative citation, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of agencies, just every agency in the county, cities and the county, have administrative penalty ordinances, citation ordinances that cover all of the different kinds of violations that a city can have, for example, and have penalties related to that. In researching it, because I've drafted ordinances like that for Arroyo Grande and also for a fire one for Cambria. But in looking, when we're developing the one for the city of Arroyo Grande, I was doing some research, and some cities had penalty resolutions. They would do it by resolution, and it would vary widely depending on the penalty. You know, walking a dog without a leash would be maybe a $50 fine, that kind of thing. Some agencies just have the kind of penalty set up that the chief was just alluding to. And of course, we could always come back and amend our code if we feel that $100 penalty was insufficient, since, as I mentioned, this is going to be a learning process in terms of how we implement it, and for the community too.
Well, see, I just see fines and penalties as a deterrent. And is $100 really going to be deterrent? Somebody might say, well, I'll take the risk.
Well, I think
It's not that much. The other issue is that the cost of administering it to collect on those fines, to make sure those fines are paid. And then what if those fines are not paid? What's our options available there?
Well, the ordinance does.
Collection.
Pardon me?
From my understanding, the collection agency.
So it'd be turning it over to collection, which would write off that debt.
Correct.
And as bad debt, and then it would go to the collection agency to collect.
Right.
And we would get pennies on the dollar.
Right.
Yeah, we get half.
But following up on that question, my concern would be, what happens if somebody appeals? We're gonna have to hire a hearing officer or get one here. we're gonna have to, they don't go, if it goes through the hearing officer and they wanna take it further, we're gonna have to get an attorney. It's gonna be a big cost, and all that cost, as I understand, it's gonna go to the fire department.
You voted for fireworks.
Well, I didn't know you were gonna do all of this stuff. So, I mean, if you're gonna collect, and there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, well, for $100, I'll just take it to hearing
Yeah,
office.
it's not enough.
So I can see our legal expenses, no offense, David, but going up to $1,000 to collect 100, that makes no sense.
So let's separate the two issues a little bit. You have the illegal firework violation is modeled directly after the county's ordinance. It's
Yeah.
recommended to be $1,000. We don't suggest you mess with that because it has
There's
to,
no issue.
okay. And yes, I agree with you that in some cases, there will be costs associated with administering this program that exceed the fine amount. In maybe every case that goes to a hearing officer, at that point, we're gonna have a lot of time invested into the program. It's not gonna be a net revenue generator for those penalties. However, unless there are consequences, the culture of the community may not change. And I'm not certain how much it will change initially anyways, but for decades now, there hasn't been a real consequence, right? That's why we have what we have.
But it's been a growing problem too.
And David, from my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we can add in administrative fee recovery on a hearing, correct? If they
Lose the
choose
hearing.
to, if they lose the hearing, a cost recovery portion.
Yeah, there's cost recovery language in the ordinance that is part of the county's ordinance that
Yeah.
is pretty broadly written.
The cost recovery in the ordinance is concerning the amount of staff time it takes to process the initial violation. But I don't, because that's included when the civil penalty is issued. Are you suggesting that, David, we would have the ability to then charge let's say the person requests a hearing, a fee to hold the hearing? That is not included in the ordinance right now.
No, I don't think we really could do that. And there are due process considerations that come into play where people have a right to contest the citation.
But if they lost the hearing, so granted, it wouldn't cost them anything to appeal. If they lost that appeal, would we be able to recover our staff costs?
Are you speaking of the additional time to
The
process?
additional time to
Hearing.
process that hearing, that appeal.
No, I don't believe so.
Who's gonna be issuing these citations? Just the firefighters?
I want it as a deterrent.
So right now for us, it's sworn, non-sworn, and other individual staff members who can issue the citations within that umbrella is classified, correct?
Yeah, they do county code enforcement, they can do
And then
some
within our
stuff, but
department, it's
within,
those individuals who have been identified.
it'll just be fire department personnel.
So, Wayne, were you also recommending that the $100 fee be increased? Because you were articulating concerns
I
about.
mean, I think when we get to that point, we probably should, because I mean, you got all these people that are addicts as far as fireworks, go out and spend $500,000 on fireworks. $100 is nothing.
They'll take that risk.
Yeah, sure.
But these are safe and sane fireworks.
These are safe and sane we're talking about.
Yes, so in the instance of safe and
Can you
sane.
just wait, please, for questions only, because I wanna go to the public and then we'll come back and then we'll have comments. Thank you. So if there are no further questions, let me go ahead and open it to the public, please. Any questions from, comments from the public on this matter? Yes, go ahead, please.
Evening, board members. My name is Mike Manshak. I'm a longtime Templeton resident. I think this is a really important topic. As I'm hearing the discussion, which I think is amazing, but it reminds the residents in this community that Paparolas and Atascadero do not allow these fireworks. And you're talking about educating people that come here and light fireworks and then burden the already challenged financially fire department to take care of this problem. So we've almost invited our own problem. We created our own problem. And we're burdened, the community is, with the cost of resolving that. That just doesn't make sense. But let me go to my comment if I could. We're living, and what I want to do is just address kind of a higher level issue about insurability and the environment we're now living in terms of fire risk. We're living in a very different and high risk insurance and wildfire environment than we were even 5 years ago. Insurance companies are now using satellite imagery and aerial analytics to monitor tree growth, vegetation density, and even aerial analytics to monitor the growth around Templeton, right? Because over the years, you've got all these trees that are bigger than they were, but there's also watching this, and they're canceling people's policies, or they're raising their rates through the roof, right? But I've been told this by insurers, and they're actually, and there's no discussion in the community about the pockets that are being watched by satellite to say this forested area is now a high risk, which again goes back to fireworks, right? But over the years, the trees have grown significantly, but including in these high risk areas, in particular around the medical office buildings, which, by the way, during 4th of July, it gets flooded with people who are lighting off fireworks like there's no tomorrow. And I'm assuming that some of them may be from Atascadero or Paso Robles, again. But despite the existing and proposed rules, which I'm not opposed to, it does conjure up this concept or this concern that we're now burdening the fire department that is already burdened with financially and with staffing. But again, you have to do the right thing. You have to discourage bad behavior through penalties, I suppose. But so it's not only that life and limb, but it's also the insurability of our community. That's a really, really big thing. One preventable fire could affect many property owners financially for many, many years. I mean, it's happening in other parts of the state, and we're sort of Johnny-come-lately in terms of the risk associated with, because we haven't had big fires here. But one could be started, it could be prevented. So, if the fireworks were allowed at all, and here's something I want to talk about, which is briefly, is if I could wrap it up, using and considering not just the costs associated with the loss of animals that are run because of the fireworks and the challenges to animal control and woods, but also the fact that you've got a situation here where you're going to burden people with fire insurance that we have not seen 5 years ago. It's a real issue. So I want to just end with that, and best of luck on this one.
Thank you.
Tough issue.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, well, now let's bring you back to the board.
Can I just clarify one thing? So, the board, just again, for the benefit of the public as well, did, adopt the updated 2025 fire code, and in it adopted revised rules for safe and sane fireworks. And I think the questions that are coming up tonight about safe and sane are, relate to, we have new rules, really limitations about where safe and sane fireworks can be used. So under in the code, the now adopted Templeton code, safe and sane fireworks can only be used on private property, cannot be used in streets, sidewalks, public places, commercial parking lots, etc. So the issue is, I think it's safe to assume that most people who use safe and sane fireworks, particularly from out of town, are not following this issue closely, and will show up on July 4th and buy fireworks and go to the places they've historically gone. It's my recommendation that we do not approach those folks with a heavy hand initially. We're not talking about financial penalties, but rather education and letting them know that what has worked, what has been allowed in the past is not allowed any further. But over time, if we're unable to make progress, and this pattern continues, even with education, years 3, years 4, the penalties may become necessary to serve as a deterrent. You can set, because there's no place in the county rules about violations against safe and sane, you can set that fine amount. It's been drafted in this ordinance at $100. If that's too high, you can set it at 50 or 25. If it's too low, you can set it at 200 or 300 or 500 or 250 or whatever you'd like. But that's how we plan on approaching it in terms of using education first and knowing that persons who have historically lit safe and sane fireworks in streets and in sidewalks and in commercial parking lots probably aren't following this issue or would be possibly unaware that those rules have changed. Our code also asks that the fireworks booths provide this information. We will certainly have a website that has the information, but I think it's unrealistic to expect everybody who buys fireworks to thoroughly research this issue. So that's the approach on safe and sane. So I would kind of ask you to sort of separate that just for the time being, and if there are concerns or comments about the concept in general, particularly for illegals, we address those, and then deal with safe and sane a little differently, even though it's embedded in the same ordinance. Thank you.
I have one more question, I'm so sorry. When you purchase a safe and sane firework, you're not required to provide your address, correct?
Correct.
Or like temple, any identification, like proof.
So there's a proof of
residency,
age, not residency. That was a topic that was brought up at least one of your meetings, maybe a committee meeting, and it did not make its way into the ordinance. The district's code does not require or does not limit the sale of safe and sane fireworks to residents only.
Now, for comments, you guys have.
So I have a question as well, going back to, the fire department doing the education. And I know that you're out and about during the day on 4th of July. And in the evening, I think, based on past, 4th of July's, the fire department has been busy putting out dumpster fires or dealing with other issues. And given our recent changes in staffing, how are you going to address the education?
So the education portion of it is gonna obviously be well up front with social media, videos, regular media. We plan on using whatever donated funds we get from the fireworks booths to put signs up. We've gotten estimates on 4x8 signs that we'll do 5 of them throughout the community in key locations. We plan on doing spots with KSBY, all the different media outlets, and then obviously social media and hitting that really hard. The evening of, or the day of, obviously, as the general manager mentioned, we're gonna have handouts that all the fireworks booths are gonna be required to hand out. And at
And
that.
you do that at the pancake breakfast as well?
Yeah, we can do that at the pancake breakfast as well. But then that evening, we will divide and conquer like we typically do. Each engine will have personnel on each engine, and then we'll have a personnel in a utility, and then I'll be out in my vehicle, and that's all we have.
And
So
then
that's really
Will you have overtime staff or will you bring in additional staffing for that evening?
Yeah.
And by the way, that's not new, right?
That's
We-
not-
Yeah.
we-
I just
we-
want, but
we
we've made
up-staff.
changes in our staffing.
We do.
And I want to make sure that we've got staff because we're asking the fire department to take on an additional activity. In addition to putting out fires or addressing any fires that occur, we're also asking you to patrol.
Honestly, we're gonna have to prioritize.
Mhm.
And obviously emergencies, 911s, anything of that nature is gonna
Yeah,
take priority
absolutely.
over any
Yeah.
enforcement. So.
And I would expect this would be at the bottom.
Well, I mean, I think it's a valid point that there's only so many resources to go around and we have fewer and fewer.
I understand that.
But our expectations, we'll bring on every person that we can.
But the point is we decided to do fireworks. We said, let's continue to do fireworks, which I'm opposed of for all the reasons you've stated. Because 10 of the largest fire insurance companies have left the state of California or are no longer writing policies, or they're providing 40% increases in the premiums. So it is an issue. But we've decided to continue to, and this board voted to continue to do fireworks, and I want to make sure that we're addressing it. I understand we're only going to do education, and I think all those things that you cited are good. And it is going to be hard to change the behavior, and it's not going to happen the first year. But I would like to see that this board readdress the use of safe and sane fireworks each and every year. because it is a risk to the community. And in fact, when we had this at the September 3rd meeting, most of the people who wrote letters, we had 14 letters received. All of them opposed Safe and Sane fireworks. Only one supported it, and that was TNT. Now, we had a split number of people in the audience regarding Safe and Sane fireworks or not. But nonetheless, I think it's something we need to reevaluate because the environment is changing. And there's a reason why there's only 5 municipalities in the entire county that allow Safe and Sane fireworks, and we're one of those 5.
Can I make a brief comment?
Just a minute.
I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, I mean, I do have a concern with, because we did make a change with our staffing with the fire department, so that, I mean, I really appreciate having this, civil administrative citations, but being able to, actually being out there enforcing it, that's gonna be a challenge. I understand that, but, but I just wanna let you know, I mean, also, that was the reason, and that's why I finally agreed to move forward with having the fireworks, was both the fireworks booth and TNT they offered to give us substantial donations to be able to.
But it's not about the money, it's putting.
But let me please speak, to let us, to do this enforcement, because we do need the enforcement, because things have been going on for a long time, and we do need the money to start this enforcement process, and it's not gonna, for the illegals, yes, the illegals are bad. And I agree that we should evaluate it every year, so I don't have a problem with that, but I'm hoping that we're giving the fire department, at least financially, the necessary financial means to go ahead and do this civil administrative citations and help out with that. That being said, go ahead, and if you'd like to make your quick comment, please.
Very quick. So, you might consider something, which is using more carrot than stick, which is do what has worked elsewhere. So in Pasadena was, they allow professionally run fireworks shows to happen from the vineyards, from the wineries. Not to say we couldn't do the same thing by encouraging people to say, gosh, look, there's a professional using that vineyard out there with the owners to run a professionally run, safer operation. Thereby, we don't need to have our own in our own driveway. We can just watch it from afar, and it's even better.
Yeah,
just my thought.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other?
So with regard to the fine amount, since we're not issuing citations for Safe and Sane, I would say leave it as is, and I think that's something we can reevaluate.
Yeah, and again, I wanna say, it's not that we're not, it's our goal not to, it's our goal to educate, but I think if one of our fire personnel go to a site and say, excuse me, you have to move back onto private property, here's the information, you no longer can light this firework off in the street, and the person just says, when they continue to light them off, they're gonna get a violation, they're gonna get a citation.
Then up it to $250.
Because that means the education hasn't changed the behavior.
Yeah. Make it $250 then, would be my recommendation. I don't know how everybody else feels.
For what, $250 for what?
The
For
fine,
violations for Safe and Sane.
I mean,
for the example that
I
Jeff
mean,
just
we
gave.
have no data at this point
Yeah,
in time, so the idea is, let's get something on the books that we can agree upon. We can revisit this post July 4th to identify whether or not this actually had a meaningful impact on the number of both legal and illegal fireworks. And once we get this feedback, then we can identify with what it is that we need to do. If it's more education, if it's raising fines, if it's more enforcement, if it's aerial, for all these types of things. This is the very first time that we're actually introducing this to the community. I think any positive movement forward is better than trying to figure out the minutia right now before actually getting that repeatable data or doing nothing.
Cause
So
you'll be tracking each interaction, even if it doesn't result in a citation for the Safe and Sane violators, right?
You mean if
Well,
we make, we
Yeah,
make contact?
We'll have that data later on, correct?
We might make contacts, but so, for example, every time we generate a call, the county charges us an amount. And I don't want to start generating 100 calls that night, at about $85 per call, that's gonna offset anything
Okay.
that our enforcement would bring in, so, I would have to look at a mechanism. And we're gonna have to look at this mechanism anyways, which we have a program called Image Trend, where we can collect data, but we only collect that when we generate a call.
Okay, because
So
otherwise.
it would
how-
not be my intention initially to get information on every person we make contact with.
I would think it would just be something very informal.
Correct.
With just talking with your staff and just saying, how did it go? What kind of issues did you, encounter? Because it is
And-
really one day.
And we'll have
that we're really
rough
talking about.
numbers,
Yeah.
but to actually grab data for every contact, that would be a little difficult.
And I think it would, unfortunately, it would slow down
Yeah.
the issue we have is there's a very limited number of resources that we can devote to this activity. And we know there's already gonna be disruptions in that enforcement activity, because if we have, let's just say we have 6 firefighters on duty that evening, and we have a fire, those folks are gonna respond to the fire, or at least one of the crews, probably all of them.
All of them.
Oh,
So the enforcement will stop. So what we want to do is have as many contacts as possible, so that we can be more effective with education, knowing this limited resource. So we maybe have like an after action report for the whole night. Yeah, and we talked to approximately 12 people.
Yeah, okay,
You know,
yeah,
sure.
just so we have
You know,
some,
we witnessed 6 violations that were citable. We were able to cite 4. The other 2, we couldn't get enough information on to secure, et cetera.
yeah.
So that's the kind of information I'm hoping to get.
Yeah.
And I think that's reasonable, but to collect, to ask our folks to fill out a form.
No,
After every
yeah.
contact's gonna just make that much slower to then make the next contact.
Correct.
Um,
All right, then, so, there are no more questions or comments, I'll go ahead and, so we'll keep the $100. If there's no other changes that you wanna make to the ordinance, then I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and, I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion to consider ordinance number 2026-1, creating civil administrative citations and penalties for fireworks violations, and determine that the ordinance is not a project and otherwise exempt from CIGWA.
Excuse me, we would need a motion to read by title only and
Okay.
waive further reading first.
Okay, so, and then waive do you want a separate motion or on the same one?
It would be appropriate to do that first as a separate motion.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, then, so I'll go ahead and I'll make a motion to waive the further reading and read by title only and introduce ordinance 2026-1.
I'll second.
Is that good?
Right.
I think that's good, huh?
Yep, that's good.
That's good, okay. Do you second? Okay. Roll call, please.
Director Sardonish,
Aye.
Tyrone. Aye. Logan,
Aye.
Mortensen,
Aye.
and Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, and then I'll go ahead and make the motion to go ahead and now introduce ordinance, is that what?
you introduced the ordinance by title only just a moment ago.
Okay, so, and then what else? Do we need to do anything else?
The sequel finding was,
That's fine. It's in the ordinance.
Okay, so we're good? Okay, we're done. All right, thank you. All right, so let's go to the next item, which is the resolution number 02-2026, which is to approve the fee related to sale of the Safe and Sane fireworks in accordance with chapter 56.
so this item is actually kind of very related to what you just spoke about. And so some of the items get my group together. When the updated fire code was introduced and was approved, adopted, and you modified the rules pertaining to safe and sane fireworks, made certain sections of the rules that applied previously are no longer in the code, including the fee to the fireworks sales booth permit holder. Previously, it was $1,500 per booth. And as the Fire Emergency Management Committee went through the process of how Fireworks were gonna be enforced. Some of these issues also kind of bled together. You heard at your December meeting, that, and the committee heard in December as well, that there had been a relatively new, change in law that enabled the district to create a fee that was based on gross sales, provided that fee doesn't exceed 7%. So there was some concerns about, well, how much would that fee be? And the representatives from TNT who support 3 of the 4 booths have estimated that if the fee was in 7% fee was in place last year in 2025, it would generate about $21,000. Those same folks cautioned the district that said they would expect sales to be lower going forward because of the number of rule changes that have been made regarding safe and sane fireworks. Keep in mind, the hours have been cut back slightly to when they can be sold, and there are limitations, further limitations about when they can be used. 4th of July only between noon and 10 p.m. And then, of course, lots of restrictions about where they could be lit off, including places that have been historically used like Templeton Park and parking lots, et cetera. So we put together kind of a draft budget for what we think it takes to support the continued sale of safe and sane, the regulations and the enforcement of fireworks. And we've estimated that the general program administration, including the permitting of these booth holders, the booth inspections, and overall admin at about $1,600, public education at about $5,000, staffing for Independence Day. This is a 12-hour staffing program. This would include bringing on 4 additional full-time employees on overtime and up to 3 reserve firefighters, assuming we have folks that are still associated with the district willing to work, would be about $6,600. And then if we're to implement an aerial surveillance program, and we're working on trying to get estimates, better estimates for that at about $10,000. That amount came from the city of Lombok's contract for an aerial surveillance program, would total about $23,000. So that would exceed what we expect to be the income derived from the gross sales at 7%. This code section doesn't allow you to charge more than 7%. And the big change would be the funds would be collected after the conclusion of the fireworks sales, and the booth holders would report to us their gross sales, and remit a payment of equal to 7% as it's been prepared today, as opposed to paying a flat fee up front. This was a suggestion from TNT Fireworks that came starting in September, and we learned more about it as time went on. But this is the program that they had recommended the district follow.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
So there seems to be a little bit of a deficit here between the 23,000 in terms of the costs that are expected and the 20,000 that we would get from the 7%. With respect to the permitting, is that something we can charge the booths in addition to the 7%?
So the costs are all encompassing. So whether it's permitting or the regulation and enforcement,
One or the other?
it's all inclusive. But we did get a commitment from TNT to make that the TNT and the existing booth holders would make voluntary contributions above and beyond the 7% to try to cover this deficit, although that is not a fee that's formally established.
So right now, it's gonna cost us more, given our estimates, it's gonna cost us more to have safe and sane fireworks than what we're gonna collect in probable revenue.
But that would be if we do the aerial surveillance.
But that's assuming
This
that
is
it.
to take care of. It's not-
Correct, so whether that's lower or whether that's higher, that would adjust that rate.
And this isn't because we haven't safe and sane fireworks, it's because we're trying to enforce against illegal fireworks.
Yeah, but I think that
But
the safe and
also-
sane fireworks are bringing in a lot of the illegal too.
But also, I mean, the commitment is supposed to add up to $16,000. In
I mean, that's
addition.
for one, it would, and that's, the commitment is made annually,
Mhm,
and so.
yeah. Yeah.
And we just have to,
So we've got to rely upon them, the generosity of those
because there's no,
Well, you can-
organizations.
yeah,
there's no
but
heat
legal-
behind this.
No, there isn't. And
Generous
so
contribution.
again, if they don't do it next year, we'll revisit it and then say, okay, this didn't happen, what do we need to do? So, now-
$16,000 is the proposed
Contribution.
approximate.
That included some stuff, some in-kind,
Not really.
Education
the education materials, or
It's
so.
addition. I thought it was additional. The education stuff was supposed to be
Well,
additional.
So there-
with regard to the education, I would think that that would be a one-time expense because I wouldn't see that it would change. I mean, if we're posting something at the booths, unless our ordinance changes, that should be a one-time expense.
The educational materials will probably be like a one every 5 year because those wear out.
Okay,
And so
The-
maybe one every 5 year, when you're creating the signs, you're creating, the
but it's
the
not a
flyers and the-
recurring expense annually.
No.
Yeah.
And so-
The annual stuff would be anything that we would have to do through the media if they charged us, or, creating a new video that we could send out through social media. Those could potentially be the annual.
Yeah.
But again, a one-time video, we did a training video about 4 years ago, and it's been running for the last 4 years, and we haven't had that data yet, which we probably should, but.
Well, the fixed expenses would be the program administration permitting the booths, because that's done annually. Extra staffing for the fire department, and then the contract services. Those would be.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, even though you might own the sign, there's still a cost of putting it up and taking it down every year and.
But that, it's not creating the signage, so there's, we've got $5,000 there. I'm just looking at how we can kind of close that deficit, because I.
Well,
hate to see
again, I
that the
won't, I don't think
district
we'll
is
know.
Yeah.
Incurring more money, more expenses than what it's getting in the revenue to cover this.
Well, that's how that's how it's set up, right? Like you couldn't justify a 7%
Yes,
charge
we
if you were only gonna spend 5%.
But if you have it at break even, I mean, it's not intended to be a profit-making business, but I would like to at least see it break even, not have a
But
deficit.
that's where we're gonna have the donations. We'll have the donation. I have
I don't like
assurance.
relying upon donations.
Well, I mean, that's all we could do by law. So,
I understand that.
You're gonna have these same expenses even if you outlawed all the fireworks.
Exactly.
You're still gonna have to
Yeah.
have you're still gonna have to spend that $10,000 to have somebody
I
come
mean,
over,
if
who's
honestly-
gonna be breaking the law.
Well,
So-
but if we outlawed if we outlawed safe and sane fireworks, would the county then take over the illegal fireworks?
Absolutely not.
No
No.
way, Jose.
No, they don't have the personnel that.
And they don't have the
Well, but
jurisdiction.
doesn't their ordinance cover it?
No,
Yes.
they don't.
But they don't
Yes.
have-
Wait, I'm hearing different things.
Yes, but they don't have the jurisdictional authority unless we grant them.
So we
No.
could grant them the
Are you speaking of enforcement of illegal fireworks?
illegal fireworks
The
only.
county can today enforce illegal fireworks in Templeton, but they haven't.
Okay,
And we did have participation from a sheriff's department representative that said, that they're willing to pay more attention to Templeton, but there's a very limited amount of resources they have.
Understood.
On that same night too, they hadn't viewed Templeton's problems as being as significant as maybe San Miguel or Cayucas. So I think there was some learning going on through this process over the last 6 months in terms of how our community felt about these problems. So the county they could have in 2025, but they did not.
So I just wanna clarify this. The county sheriffs can, yes. The county fire department cannot,
yeah, understood.
okay? So
Yeah,
that's.
yeah, I
not
got that.
going-
I'm looking at the
That's the
county as
clarification.
an
I wanna make.
ordinance that is focused on illegal fireworks.
Right, but we're adopting this code per TCSD ordinance.
Correct.
Yes, county sheriffs can come in and enforce through their county administration. The county fire department cannot come in
Yeah,
and do
understood,
that same thing because it is a different fire authority.
understood.
Any other questions? I'm gonna go to the public. Any questions from the public on this matter? If you don't mind stepping to the podium, please.
No, it's good. Stupid even mentioned, but if you know, the cost of fireworks here is very expensive. And all people, you know, it might even cost, you know, by raising it, it might even cost more illegal fireworks. Because you could go across the border into Arizona, Nevada, right across the border, they're selling fireworks, and it's extremely inexpensive. I mean, much cheaper than what it's, so you might have more illegal fireworks coming in, because when you know, when you come across the border into California, those guard shacks are empty. There's no one watching. So it'd be simple for someone to go over there, buy fireworks and bring it back here. And, you know, I don't know if it's gonna happen or, you know, because those things are sold, 12 months out of the year. It's not like they're around, you have to go over there around the 4th of July. So if people go over there, they can pick these things up whenever they're there, bring them back and keep them until the 4th of July. So I don't know if that'll happen, but it's just something that you may want to.
It happens.
Well, I know it happens, but it's just like, I don't know if it's gonna increase, if the price goes up over here, if it's gonna increase the amount coming in or not, but just wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
Gwen Helfrey, longtime resident and a past worker in the fireworks booths. I would volunteer at the community booth that is on Las Tablas. And what I recall is that the fire department did have a training session that we were mandated to attend. And that at that training session, you can give them the signage that you want them to that you're mandating they post. Maybe ask them to prepare some of the flyers. Because we always handed out the flyer of where the fireworks could be shot off. Use them as your additional educational groups. And then when it comes to at the end of the event and they're figuring out their budget of what they made, if they truly understand that your cost to administer needs to be met in order for the fireworks to continue, for them to have as a fundraiser, because for some of the groups, it has been a good fundraiser. So I think you can get support of those individuals that are benefiting or their organizations are benefiting so they can give back to the community.
Yeah, we've already have that, so thank you. Okay.
I do have another question.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Right.
On the Independence Day extra staffing, assuming we had no Safe and Sane fireworks, would your staffing levels be the same?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't adjust that at all?
No, I mean, the first thing is we have to have staff for the parade.
Yeah.
Cause we typically get hit multiple calls.
Yeah.
During that period.
Yeah.
And then we typically go off staff until, I don't know, 4 or 5, and then bring personnel back on. But that's typically to patrol and look at the illegal activity that's taken place and try and curtail it. Now I've told the guys in past years, don't engage into areas where it's a party where there are intoxicated individuals and those types of things. Hopefully this year with the sheriff's involvement, we're gonna have that backup to be able to go in and engage some of those, and then write the appropriate citations. No, I wouldn't see the staffing, especially this first couple of years, as we start to get an education element in the community. potentially a reduction in staffing.
Well, I think we would still have the illegal fireworks to contend with.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, yeah.
But you're not going to be allocating time, to say, oh, they're responding to a fire versus they're doing education of fireworks. So you're not, for
No,
those extra staffing, you're not saying how that time is being used. So it's just that you're adding staff to deal with everything that happens on 4th of July.
Correct. Yeah, which,
Okay.
you know, Atascadero and Paso Robles both up staff on the evening of 4th of July.
Okay, thank you.
Did I hear you say with sheriff backup?
Mhm.
Where did that come from?
If they provide us backup.
Yeah, but the big word there is if, and
Yeah.
from.
Well, they had
Deputy
indicated,
commander was here, they would triage that, but the chances of them having any extra people to help Templeton was kind of slim and none.
well, from my understanding, with the increased attention given to this, with the incident obviously we had, I see us getting,
I think
for
there's.
lack of a
I
better
think
term, a
there's-
little more attention this year.
But the question is just becomes the same for you. It's like, this is not the only thing you're doing that night.
No,
So it's not the only thing the sheriff's doing either.
right.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, then, I'll go ahead, I'll make the motion that, we adopt resolution 02-2026, establishing a fee of 7% on gross sales for safe and same fireworks sales permits.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call, please.
Directors Vardanen,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Mortensen,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
and Tyrone.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, next item is the 2020 fire and emergency.
Okay, with your permission, I'll be leaving now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Aye.
Wait, look down here, you listen, I close out of the moment.
That was quick.
A little too fast on that.
All right, chief, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good evening and thank you. Tonight I'm presenting your the fire department's annual 2025 report. It's a little bittersweet for me because this will be my last report, annual report to you guys, as my retirement date will be this July. So
July
July
3rd.
July 3rd? How did you know? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that to them.
Yeah, yeah. It's not to us, it's to them.
They know.
So personally, I'd like to thank the board for their support over the last 5 years, and then thank the board for the recent vote on the engineer positions. That too, a little bittersweet. Unfortunately, it was the necessary evil that had to take place at that point in time. Again, I'd just like to remind the board that the reason for this annual report is to highlight the department's achievements, identify recommendations for the future, any significant changes we've had throughout the year. And basically, this is an opportunity, you know, for the board to have any questions and for me to share with the board that, you know, how vitally important the fire department is with regards to public safety in the community. We have a real need to fund the fire department into the future. And it's significantly important that you guys get this information to make those decisions that move that priority scale up and down as to what the fire department's needs are. In 2025, we continued to promote public safety, and that was our top priority throughout the community. We continued our, excuse me, I'm stuck right here. We continued our Type 1 engine purchase. and if I can back up just for a second, I would like to touch on, where we were about 5 years ago. When I came to the department and where we are now. Again, we've done our best to create a fire department that I believe the community wants. Staffing wise, equipment wise, professionalism. And again, the decisions by this board with the information that you get on this report will be, affected on the decisions you guys make. Again, obviously, I'm a little biased, but in my opinion, the fire department needs to be a very high priority in the board's decision-making process, and I think it is. But to look at that priority as being essential for funding into the future and beyond. I've done my best over the last 5 years to share the concerns of the department, the concerns with staffing, and I've done my best to communicate what one less person does on the engine, and identify those shortcomings when we don't have that third person on there. And I know to the degree that I drone on about NFPA 1710 and the funding, or excuse me, the staffing requirements that NFPA calls out, it does affect how we go about business. And I just want the board to be well aware of that and understand that with the 2.0 staffing, it's going to affect business, but it will affect it less than our other alternative of going with the Measure A model. So again, thank you to the board for that. The community is growing, and we can't ignore that fact. With that growth, you're going to see, why it keeps doing this. You're going to see call volumes increase. Just the basic stuff that we've been getting a lot of lately with regards to residents coming in and asking for assistance. Obviously our elderly population is growing, and we're getting a lot of calls for smoke detector support. And they can't change their smoke detectors. This is service that we provide. We do make it a what we call a public assist call for the majority, but we will go out and we'll help them change their smoke detectors or the batteries, smoke detectors, one or the other. But with all that said, again, the board's going to have some hard decisions in the future, and I hope prioritizing public safety is going to be at the top of that list. Despite these challenges, the department will continue to demonstrate professionalism, both financially and professionally within the community. We have continued pursuing grants, and we will continue to pursue grants, but that's not going to make up that funding gap, and I know the board knows that. We continue with our public outreach and our involvement with the education of the public, and we do a lot of that, which I'll get into through the open houses and those types of things. Again, I remain optimistic about the future of the fire department and the continued support of the board. And I know we can achieve a properly staffed, equipped, and trained fire department by working together, even well after my departure, to make sure that when I have to call them, they're ready, trained, and appropriate, get there in an appropriate amount of time. So I've covered most of this stuff. Again, the stuff we're working on, the fire engine, we will be going out either next month or the following month for a pre-construction meeting back in Wisconsin to start that construction process. We've established what the engine is. There's not a lot that we can change on it, but there is some pretty significant tweaks that we will do to it to modify it to our best usable advantages, with apartment space and that type of things, some of the interior design, that type of stuff. And so that'll be a good opportunity for us. We have completed the fire station expansion design and submitted that for construction permits. And it has come back to us for the first round of comments. We've completed everything that we have to do, except for one item that sits on my table, and I've got to get back with that person tomorrow. It's the special inspector. And we just have to get that person's name, and then we resubmit to the county. And that should identify all their needs. There were very few significant items that came across. So we should hopefully have something back from the county within a month or two. Okay, yeah, all of these items I've pretty much touched on. This is our current organizational chart. It looks a lot different than 5 years ago when the majority of this was all reserve firefighters. And unfortunately, this line right here will be going away tomorrow morning. One of our last reserve firefighters, Daniel Garmendia, is finishing out his shift, and that will be our last reserve, and we will go to 2-0 staffing tomorrow morning. So all of those folks across the bottom right there have served their last shift, and Daniel will be the last one to go out tomorrow. Excuse me. Obviously, my priorities, public safety throughout the community, firefighter safety, public safety. Again, the 2 in, 2 out, I'm gonna beat that dead horse again, because that's that NFPA 17 compliance. With 2-0 staffing, we will be limited now, and we will have to affirm that we have what's called a life safety threat in a structure before we can now make entry into that structure. If we don't have a confirmed life safety threat, we're going to have to wait for a mutual aid engine to arrive before we can actually make entry into the structure. Before we were able to do that, with me arriving on scene, we had 3 on the engine, so we had 2 in and 2 out. That can't be accomplished until that next engine gets there now. So effective fire suppression, rescue operations, and EMS and medical capabilities, we're going to continue to strive to not see a significant impact in those and move forward. Again, I will breeze through this. I wanted this in the annual report just to remind the board the importance of NFPA 17 and what those minimum staffings do. Again, the low hazard is a single family residential structure fire. It needs 15 firefighters. And we can't achieve that right now. A lot of our departments can. We will have to look at renegotiating, and I'll do that before I leave, to potentially get another engine from the county on a single family residential structure fire, which will give us 2 more people. That will bump us close to that 15 number. And so those are some of the realities that we have to look at. Getting into call volumes and response statistics. Obviously, the board is well aware that we had a pretty significant incident this year. I won't get a lot into that until we get a little further into the presentation. But as you can tell, the call volume from 2022 up through 2025 has gone up significantly. 920 calls in 2022, and this last year we did 1,229 calls. So we are seeing an uptick. The general manager and I just had a discussion a week ago about we were off for the first month pretty significantly in our call volume, and then over this last weekend, that quick we caught up and surpassed. The trend is continuing. We're going to see increased call volumes that will tax our personnel. And some of those call volumes, or some of those calls are changing in characteristics, and we're getting more nighttime calls also. And that's just a given, we understand that. But I'll show you where some of those calls are starting to take place also. The call breakdown, with regards to 24, the breakdown doesn't really change significantly. As you can tell with our medical aids, this year or this last year, 2025, as opposed to 24, we were at 56%. In 24, we're at 57%. And then fires were right there at 26%. That didn't change a whole lot. So those were obviously pretty close and stayed pretty consistent. This is a breakdown of the type of calls that we have. And you can see that they are going up, and the 3-year averages are going up with regards to 2024 and 2025. If you look at the 3-year average in 24, we had an average of 48 structure fires, 25, 56 structure fires, and then so on with medical aids. The little increase in public assists and a little bit of a drop in the vehicle accidents and rescues. This is a better breakdown of call per unit, and it shows us what unit got the bulk of the calls. And obviously our primary workhorse, which is engine 7195, 1,139 calls, 87% of them. And you know, I took a whopping 5% of that, so showed up at a few calls this year. And then 7160 obviously is our next performer, but that one goes to calls when 7195 is out of service, and you know, it'll respond to everything that 95 goes to, but it also incorporates those calls when it goes out of county, and helps in those out of county modes. These are our hotspots. I wish I could have broken this down a little further. It kind of shows more detail, but I could not get it to fit the entire district when I expanded it too much. But for example, 391 right there, that's 290 and 283 Heather Court. Our call volume at 283 Heather Court went up dramatically this year. Now that's the Templeton Gardens apartment complex. It's a senior apartment complex, and it went up significantly. We saw a few more calls at 290, but we're still not getting those what we call transfer calls. And you know, if we start getting those again, then we would go to 290 Heather Court and say, okay, if we start getting too many of these, we're gonna have to put something in place to charge you for these calls. Otherwise, you know, you got to stop calling us or 911 for a transfer to the hospital, unless it's an actual medical issue. The other hotspot, 151 up there at Via Paseo Palms. And again, that's a senior apartment complex, low income senior apartment complex. And then the 77 right there on Peterson Ranch is the new self-help housing apartment complex. And we knew that was going to be an uptick, and appreciate the board not waiving the fees on that one. Did I just double click? We have one. Okay, I didn't. What? No. Okay, there we go. So this one gives us the response times. And I know that's been one of the things with Measure A committee, as far as response times. So over here in 2024, you can see the median response time. In 2024, we took about a second off. The average, we took about 5 seconds off. And it's interesting on the percentage. I don't know why that went down ever so slightly. but, just one of those items in this, what's called a continuum program that I use to generate these numbers. And that's, I can't really answer that one for you, why that one went
Yeah,
down a
because
little
it
bit.
just, because I looked at the response time and although your call volume increased, your response time decreased.
Correct.
Not by much, but it still
Right.
decreased.
Yep.
Which.
We're doing our best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the future, we're probably not gonna see, much of an improvement on that, cause that's about as good as you
Yeah,
can get.
yeah.
You know, we've taken it down by a solid minute, when we first started doing this. So that's a pretty significant, change. I added this one at the last minute and I apologize, that's why you got a new, one. I wanted this in there. This shows the, mutual aid given and mutual aid auto aid and mutual aid given and received throughout the year. The 891 is the standard calls that we have, so that's none. But all of these numbers include the 1,229 calls. The 130 is the automatic aid that we received, on all the incidents that we had that required automatic aid. And then we gave back 93 automatic aids to Atascadero, Paso County. And that's all included within that number. Mutual aid received 64 calls and mutual aid given 48 calls. And then we had 3 others. And then this is a little fun fact. I just broke this out because not that our guys are competitive at all, but this shows the different shifts and the amount of calls that they run throughout the year. And Captain Wall's shift was the loser. Captain Goldblum's shift was
Not a reflection upon him, though.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, so that's just a little fun fact on how the different shifts, and actually, this broke out far more evenly than I thought it was going to. Pretty much right across the board even. Our training hours, again, the standard that we want to shoot for is 240 hours annually. We did 257 this year. We saw a decrease. Obviously, we held only one academy this year. So that saw a drop. And then obviously the amount of people that we have on our roster has dropped. So those training hours are going to be reflected in that also. These are our fire prevention numbers for the year. Not a significant change from last year, especially with the percentages. We did see a bit of an uptick in the permits or the applications being received with regards to development and consultations and those types of things. You know, we had a few more than last year, but a lot of those, you know, consultations just turn into a question and answer session for somebody that's looking to develop and may not or may develop depending. And then our rough sprinklers, our weed checks, our Knox box inspections, and our annual inspections, which are all done through the schools. That's our annual state mandated inspections right there. And then our public education portion, and I broke this out a little differently this year. We had about 30 hours in station tours, and that's where we bring the classes in, the kindergarten classes, the daycares, and all of those different child care facilities that want to come in and do a fire department tour. They add up, and you know, our folks do a fantastic job bringing the kids in and doing the dog and pony show out there for them, and it's a great education tool, and it's a lot of fun for the kids too. Open house, about 4 hours. That didn't really include the prep. that takes a significant amount of prep on our personnel. The burn relays about 10 hours. And then this year we had that downtown revival, which was about 8 hours. And then our Saturday farmers markets, I mean, I couldn't tell you what the hours, are that we have folks come in and look around the station, and we pass out the hats and the stickers and those types of things. So, that's all good stuff. Our apparatus, engine 7195, did about 9,000 miles last year. It's up around 200,000 miles now. It went out of service 5 times last year. And again, responded to 1,139 calls. The total costs for those out of service repairs, and I gotta give Captain Goldblum a little credit here because he's my apparatus guy. And we had to go out of service 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
About 3 weeks ago. The guys went to get some food, got back in the engine, no start. And it just wouldn't start. Captain Goldblum, day off, ran over here, got the Type 3 engine, ran it over to him so we could respond. They had to let county know that we were out of service. Fortunately, we didn't have a call in that time frame. The guys jumped on the 7160. We had to get the engine towed back here, and it wound out, the starter went out. So that's what we're dealing with a 25-year-old engine. So it's can't get the new one here fast enough. Okay.
We'll get food.
Yeah. Starved to death, guys. So the 7160, we did about 3,694 miles on it this year. And it's got about 16,900 miles on it, almost 17,000. Responded to 55 calls for service. In service, didn't really have any significant issues with it. It was never out of service. And we've done our annual service bit inspections on it, and it's working fine. 7130, which is our utility. This poor old truck has seen better days, and it's gonna have to be replaced. It's gone out of service several times on us. The transmission's going out. It responded to 3 calls. We mainly use it for getting personnel to and from training. And then if we have a significant fire, we drive it over, we load hose in the back of it, other equipment that has to be cleaned and washed that can't go back on the engine right away until it's cleaned and serviced. And this one is just running out of fuel. 7100, the rig that I drive, no issues. It's got 41,000 miles on it, 63 calls last year, and still operating fine. This is our current staff and our full-time staff, and that's what the department will look like into the near future. Except for the guy right up here will probably be moving on.
A lot younger.
Yeah, a lot less gray hair. Again, the fire station, we've talked about that, and I just left this in here, for resource purposes, basically, and hopefully we will see our new station come to fruition here shortly, depending upon the bids we get back. The last item I just added in here was training grounds, and we're hoping to find some funds to move our training grounds, because obviously there will be new wells put in down at the site down there. We won't be able to do much training down there, to move it up to the upper training grounds, hopefully in this general area. And but that's well into the future, and hopefully we can find some grant funds to take care of that move the additional training, tower that we need to keep our folks confident. With that, I'm open to any questions, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you for your service all the last 5 years here. Appreciate it. Any questions?
No more comments than the questions, so.
No questions.
I'll go to the public. Any questions? I'll bring it back to the board for comments.
So I just want to say thank you for your service. I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Almost 6.
Almost.
But I mean, it's like, it flew by quickly, but I appreciate the dedication that you and your leadership that you brought to the department. So I think that's been key. Hopefully we'll find someone who can continue what you have invested in the department in terms of establishing an operating 24/7 fire station. So, and you were the first fire chief following Measure A. So we had a lot of part-time fire chiefs prior to that. So, thank you for your service, and hopefully you'll enjoy retirement.
I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah, so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Are you staying in Templeton?
Yes.
I'd like to just echo what Debbie said, and thank you for your service, and I hope that your replacement cares about community and the fire department as much as you do. There's a difference between somebody coming in and doing the job and somebody that really cares. And you and I haven't always agreed, but I think, you really care about the department, and I think that's been very commendable. And also, I really love your reports. I mean, we've never had reports like this until you came before. So.
Wow.
We've never had a full-time fire chief.
Well, yeah, we did.
Not full-time.
But anyway. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanna say this, same thing as they mentioned, having you being part of the community, being here is just having you been able to go to so many of the calls. That's just very impressive. I mean, the luxury that there's no, that you offered us, so we really appreciate it. I don't know how we could ever replace that. So having you being here full time and being able to go to all the fire calls was very important, and I really appreciate the amount of time that you spent and showed care for this station as well as the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I just don't want to do another 5-day stint at the feed and grain. So
yeah, I know that one was hard.
No, the 5 years went slower for you than it did for us.
No, it actually went pretty quick.
Did it? Okay.
I mean, it's gonna be if I would have stuck around, it would be 6 years in August. So.
You're not done.
Fire engine.
Your Chief Peterson will still be our fire chief for a few more months, and so this is the last time you're gonna see him. So if you fail to give a big hug tonight, you'll have another chance.
It's the first time I'm hearing it. I'm still in shock.
I'll be around till after July 4th.
Hopefully.
All right, thank you. So this is just a receive and file. So thank you again for the report. Thank you. All right. Next item, mid-year budget review and adjustment.
Could I
All right.
request we take a 5-minute break before we go to the side?
Sure. Order.
Okay.
All right.
So we have the mid-year budget review up next. I've shortened it as much as I can and will go as fast as I can too, but anyways. The staff has reviewed the current status of the fiscal year 25-26 operating budget, and based on that review, we're forwarding the following budget adjustments for the board's consideration. For the water fund, an increase in revenue of $172,000 and an increase in expenses of just over $200,000. For the wastewater fund, an increase in revenue of $29,000 and an increase in expenses of $9,000. For the admin fund, an increase in revenue of 2,500 and a decrease in expenses of just over 6,000. For the fire fund, an increase in revenue of 278,000 and an increase in expenses of 146,000. Streetlights, an increase in revenue of 610 and increase in expenses of 500. And then for the park, rec, and solid waste fund, an increase in revenue of 18,000 and a decrease in expenses of just over 37,000. And then what I'll do is I'll just highlight some of the larger recommended budget adjustments instead of going over each and every single one of them in the packet. For revenue, the water fund, the user fees, we're recommending a decrease of 75,000 due to water usage remaining low through the first half of the fiscal year. An increase in interest income of 40,000, both in the water fund and the sewer fund, due to interest return for the fund just higher than originally anticipated. For the water fund, an increase in transfer in reserves asset replacement of 202,000. And that's due to increased costs related to the Platt's deep well rehab and Fortini well minor rehab column pipe replacement. And then you'll see the expenses again in the expense side for the water capital outlay. For the wastewater fund, a decrease in user fees of 15,000 due to commercial usage remaining lower than anticipated. For fire fund, miscellaneous income increase of 242,000. And that's for reimbursement of out of county assignments for the 2 fires that the fire department went on. Increase in property taxes to the fire fund of just over 25,000, park and rec 9,000, and streetlights of 600. And that was all due to adjustments in property tax revenue, which has been updated by SLO County. And that includes all the Twin Cities adjustments. And that's the adjustments for previous years as well. So it came in a lot less than
a nonprofit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot less than they originally had quoted us.
Okay.
Yeah. Park and rec, an increase in franchise fees of 26,000 due to higher than anticipated franchise fees having been received. As for expenses,
Just real quick on that. So do we anticipate that to continue at that kind of rate? I mean, it's
for the
26,000.
property taxes. Oh, wait, for the franchise
It
fees.
seems significant. So is it just a matter of timing? I mean, do we expect next year to our budget be 280?
So they have a cost of living increase that goes up each year, a couple of percent. But it always does tend to trend up a little bit more.
Well, if development goes up, I would think it would go up as well, because there would be more.
I can't imagine we've had that many customers.
So, but I think if you're asking what does 26, 27 hold? Yes, I think the 280 is sort of the baseline and it should be up a little bit from there.
Okay, so.
And we don't see it going down.
Yeah, so, okay, so that's.
Very few people cancel service.
So so for next year, we're gonna
Trend up a
assume
little bit,
20
yeah.
to 280.
And a little bit more because
Yeah.
we expect the rates to adjust again in April. The Waste Management can petition, essentially request the rates to go up, and as long as the rate calculation matches what we've pre-approved, which is the CPI, then they can implement that rate in April.
Because it is becoming a significant amount. All right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so for expenses, water fund, a decrease in salaries of 15,000 and the PERS health insurance of 16,000. And that was due to savings from 2 utility positions that are vacant for a couple of months. Here's the increase in capital outlay of 202,000 for the costs related to the Platt's deep well rehab of 12,000. And then the other 190,000 is for the Fortini well minor rehab. Wastewater fund, a decrease in salaries of 10,000 and PERS health insurance of 12,000. And that's also due to the savings from the 2 utility positions being vacant for a couple months. We have an increase in water analysis in the wastewater fund of 18,000. And that's due to testing related to master plan efforts, new plan requirements, and general future baselines. Admin fund, a decrease in the liability insurance of 9,300, and that's due to the premium lower than originally anticipated from SCRMA. Fire fund increase in salaries of 30,000, overtime of 77,000, and PERS health insurance of 15,000. And a decrease in reserve firefighters of just over 63,000. And that's all due to changing from Measure A staffing to 2O staffing for staffing during out-of-county assignments and anticipated leave. And then we're also recommending a transfer to reserves asset replacement in the fire fund of just over 70,000. And that's for equipment reimbursement revenue the department received for having the fire engine on out-of-county. In the Park Rec and Solid Waste Fund, decreases in salaries of just over 15,000 and PERS health insurance of 14,000 due to the park maintenance position anticipated vacancy for 4 to 5 months and employee changes to health insurance plans during the year. At this time, staff recommends that the board on motion approve the recommended budget adjustments to the 25-26 operating budget. If there's any other questions, we can answer.
I want to just add one item. This is something we just didn't address in this report. For me later. Historically, the district has funded using the solid waste franchise fees a recycling grant program. This has been funded between $10,000 and $15,000 a year for about a dozen years at least. A couple of years ago, there was an ad hoc committee that was formed. And one of the specific recommendations was not to continue to fund the recycling grant at the outset of the budget, but to determine if in fact there would be a surplus in that fund and consider adding that in as funds are available. The current year budget does not include the recycling grant. This time last year, you amended the budget to include funding. I think it was I believe it was $10,000 for recycling grant, the recycling grant. There have been some inquiries about, is that funding going to become available or not? We just didn't address it in this report. It's really, you could add those funds back in tonight. There is a surplus in the Parks and Rec and Solid Waste Fund. But at the staff level, I think what we've got to realize is the recycling grant is a little stale. Basically, at this point, it's primarily the same recipients year after year. For example, Vineyard Dog Park, which runs a great program, they apply and receive funding every year for many years now to purchase compostable buckets and to replenish the recycled wood chips that make the base of the area. That's one of the recipients of the grant program. So, and they have inquired about whether that program is going to receive funding or not. Early in the year, or as we were developing let me rephrase this. About when you were approving the budget, there was some thought that maybe we don't need to offer this program anymore because IWMA had a program that was available to not only local jurisdictions, but also others that could apply for these funds. Interestingly, that program was kind of put on study, and then I think is now actually kind of not available in its entirety. So it's not we couldn't direct a prior recipient to seek IWMA funding, at least right now, as an alternate to our program.
Are you
And I
asking for a
apologize.
recommendation? Are you
Well,
asking for a recommendation if we should add that or not? Or
well, I'm just telling you, now's the opportunity to do so.
If we don't want to, we could just leave it.
Absolutely, yes, you're under no obligation to provide the program.
Okay. I mean, I personally would like to leave it off, and because there's a couple other things going on, and I'm gonna make an announcement a little bit later, so I just wanna keep as much money available to us for now because of what happened with the fire department too, so I'd rather just keep it up. But that's up to.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know who would know the answer to this question. The basketball revenue went down quite a bit. That's like equivalent to like 30 or 40 kids maybe in enrollment. Do we know what happened?
I just have that it was fewer participants than expected, but We don't
It
know
was like-
exactly
There
what
was nothing.
happened.
Yeah, about 10%, about,
No, yeah.
yeah, 9% or something, yeah. Lower,
Yeah, 13% lower for basketball.
Yeah,
Yeah, I noticed.
I mean, yeah, so yeah, that went down, also concerts in the park went down. And the soccer was just barely had gone up just slightly, so I'm kind of like, what's going on a little bit?
Yikes. Something.
so when you say it went down compared to budget, the first, the item you're looking at is what we had originally approved in the budget, not necessarily what was actually received last year.
And
Yeah,
and
So
it's
I-
hard with concerts because it is over 2 fiscal years. And so
Okay.
sometimes can be heavy in one year, lighter in the next fiscal year, just depending on when, people make their donations to it too. But
alright, I think those were my questions on that, does anybody have any questions? Okay, public, any questions from public on the budget adjustments? Okay, I come back to the board, alright, if there are no further questions or comment, I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and approve the mid-year budget review.
I'll make a motion that the board approve the fiscal year 2025-26 operating budget, review and adjustments, the mid-year.
Oh, perfect, okay. Alright, we have a first and second, roll call please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Aye.
Tyrone. Aye. And Cordonish.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Alright. Last item on business, just
musical
Fine.
got it, everyone.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being patient,
Yeah.
waiting, thank you.
Wake,
Yeah.
this is a good news item, so I'm hoping
Yes.
a good way to finish
You
this
could-
up.
Yes,
Um,
so the
So-
water, your model update.
Yeah, so as we do every year around this time, we do another run of our annual water buffer model, which was established back in 2016. So this is just a schematic showing a little bit of how our different sources of water, which we'll list later on. But the whole point behind the water buffer model is to adopt a 20% water supply buffer so that in the case of these items that are listed, well failure, contamination, water quality issues, if we don't get Nacimiento water because there's a pipeline issue, drought, which we'll talk about later, isn't really an issue this year. It's looking good this year. Or, we have a bunch of people that want to tie in all of a sudden, but we'll talk about that too. So just to remind us, right now, everything's great, it's raining like crazy outside, but back in 2016, we started a multi-year drought. So this is what California looked like with extreme drought. So we're still conscious of this, and a lot of these requirements, even on the state level for reporting, is based on drought years. So we don't want to forget, but as of January 20th, and I also checked today, we have no drought in California for the first time. I want to say it's like in 12 years. So, California is actually looking pretty good in terms of water for this year. And hopefully that'll translate to groundwater later on. So our water supply portfolio, we are a part of the Atascadero Basin. We are the Templeton Subbasin. And we are able to, we have two permits, permit 8964 and 20785, to take water out of groundwater. And then we have what are called riparian licenses to take water from the Salinas underflow. And so we're blessed to be right next to the Salinas to be able to take advantage of that resource, and also to take advantage of the water that we infiltrate from our Nacimiento water project allocation and from our treated wastewater further up after it's infiltrated into our Selby ponds further up. So we have multiple sources, which is great for diversification.
So this looks similar to previous years. Our applications by license are, you know, from the groundwater basin, we get, this is an acre feet per year. So we're usually thinking gallons per day, but this is an acre feet per year. So we have 1040 from our groundwater basin. For one of our river well permits, we get 500 acre feet per year, and then we have another license kind of pairs with that for additional 102. And then our wastewater and our Nacimiento water is what varies based on how much we're actually able to infiltrate. And so these numbers vary based on how high the groundwater is that year. If everything's going well with the Nacimiento pipeline and we get all our, and when we can, we get our deliveries. But also because we only have a limited amount of storage capacity and infiltration capacity, we aren't able to take the full Nacimiento allocation as we've discussed. And so that's leading to our project where we will relocate the Nacimiento allocation to another location on the Creekside and Branch site. So in 2029 now, we're looking to have it, you know, completed end of 2028. And by 2029 be able to say that we're taking our full allocation, which is slightly over what we report. So we just expect a little bit of loss in that, but we're, you know, around the 400 acre feet per year would be where we would land after that project. So at the moment, we're looking pretty good. So you guys have seen this in years past if you've been on the board and maybe the public, but this year we do have some water to release. It's about 29 acre feet, which translates to 58 water units. So that is actually on top of 219 units. It's kind of written really small there in the top of the gray area. We still have 200 and as of December 2025, we still had 219 units that had not been allocated. So that included the ones that we released last June, so the 249 that were released. But also we got some forfeited units of people that were in payment plans and had plans change and they decided they didn't need as many. And then we also had 4 that were relinquished. And so we've had a little bit of people have, you know, given us back units, and then we still have exhausted our wait list as of now, and we still have additional. So with the 58 units and the 217, after we look at the first couple of months of this year, we have 275 units available as of today to allocate if somebody would wish to come in. And so it would just go to the process that was in place before we had this. Somebody would come in and do a water will serve application, and then we would be able to offer those units for payment. We do have the ability for folks to still do payment plan if they wish, but obviously they have to pay in full before they tie in and get a meter. So yeah, that's the good news. As you can see, the unallocated will jump up when we do have that Nacimiento, that full amount of Nacimiento allocation in 2029 again. Did you guys have any questions on this before we move on?
Yeah, just a quick question regarding the payments, the plan that you mentioned. So are we still offering that even though, so I mean, how does that work?
It's actually in our code, the allowance.
Yeah, but should it be anymore?
Well, I mean, so the code doesn't, the code doesn't say when the wait list is over, this program goes away. But we had expected to brief like the utilities committee with how the code reads and get some recommendations of whether it makes sense to modify the code to eliminate that program.
Yes. Okay. And then also same thing with relinquish.
Relinquishment is a little different. Because that came up at your last meeting, and you know, yes, I can address that now if you'd like. The district on a couple of occasions has incentivized relinquishments in 2020 14, as a result of some code changes, we developed a one-year plan to incentivize the relinquishments. There was interest, but ultimately no manage. And then it lapsed. And then about 3 years ago, the relinquishment plan, the board wanted to again stir up interest in relinquishments, and we have a very similar program where the district incentivizes relinquishments, does not charge a fee to administer them, pays what was originally paid for the unit plus interest at the rate of LAIF back to the party that's relinquishing, refunds any amounts of money that were paid as a part of a virtual meter agreement. So some optional things that we added back in with the goal of freeing up some units. And yes, I have reviewed that with our legal team, and there's a few considerations, but in general, you could essentially repeal that ordinance and go back to the ways of old where only you could still allow relinquishments, but it would just be you get a refund of what you paid, and even charge an administrative fee for that program. And that's something that's a little bit of an issue for me, because there's a lot of units out there, right, that are in various states of being assigned and will become assigned. And while we don't have any evidence that there'll be a floodgate of people wanting to relinquish, if they do, it'll zap our cash that we have in the capital fund that's intended to be used for this significant project. And so having the ability of, if a handful come in, it probably makes very little difference. But if 100 units, 100 folks showed up and wanted relinquishment tomorrow, that could change our perspective in terms of how we cash flow the Constant Recharge Recovery Project. Because it could make a significant difference.
But that's not related to our relinquishment program.
No, I think it is, because we would give the money back. That's where it comes out of. When you refund that money.
Okay, because I mean, they still have an opportunity to relinquish.
They would, but the amount that we'd have to refund is
yeah.
much smaller, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right, under the old rules.
So it is.
So you could, if you wished that we added that, I mean, it's referenced in the staff report, and if there's interest in proceeding with that, we can make that an agenda item and bring forward an ordinance or a discussion item, kind of however, if you're very confident ready to proceed, well, we could draft something and bring that back to the board for consideration. There were a few little hiccups, there are issues that I want to resolve, and, I want to address in terms of the timing of it. Maybe the relinquishment program would be available for some period of time so that we don't surprise any property owners, like, hey, maybe January 1st of 2027, it'll go away, so this is your last chance.
Yeah.
Something like that.
What do you guys think about relinquishment program?
I think we need to revisit it. Yeah, I mean, because we're entering a different phase here, with the wait list going away now. Because that was really the point of the relinquishment, to try and people relinquish it. You're not gonna use it, relinquish it, because we've got people who are wanting it. So I think it makes sense for us to revisit that.
Okay, all right, so we all agree, revisit it, okay, all right. We do that, and then, also having a discussion about this payment plan as well. See how that would work, because I think that would save a lot of headache for you
So
as
is the
well.
goal to just have a discussion about this, or to actually come up?
For the
You want
payment
staff
plan?
to come up with some other alternatives?
For the payment plan, you mean?
For, what you're both talking about, the changing the language of the relinquishment?
Yeah.
And the relinquishment program is just a repealing of the ordinance essentially that was implemented just 3 years ago.
Yeah, with the payment
It's not
plan.
very significant. The payment plan issues, it would require an ordinance change to remove the payment plan, but I think that it may be worth some further discussion. I've kind of heard that maybe there's some benefits of at least offering it, but it does complicate things, and it's not as straightforward.
I think,
So, I mean, my hope was to hold that discussion with the Utilities Committee, but if you'd like to, we could do a discussion with the board on the topic and review the code section.
I agree.
Do you want to bring it to us, or do you want to bring it to the utilities committee?
Well, is the Utilities Committee, are they meeting in the near future?
I think we were talking just this morning about trying to get something set up this spring.
I prefer the utilities committee,
Yeah,
hearing it first and then come,
Yep.
bringing us with summary solutions and alternatives.
Utilities.
Was there any discussion on lowering the buffer policy? I know the board discussed that a few meetings ago. But I thought that was gonna be covered in this.
So.
I don't see anything about that.
It was altered last June.
Yes.
The water buffer policy, not the 20%, but we're providing since June of last year, we're providing this credit for the assumed future wastewater flows as a water supply. That's how we ended up with the release of about 250 water units last June. So that's still reflected in this update. It's
Yeah,
those
it was
assumptions got
the same
incorporated.
assumption carried forward.
We're using a new assumption model.
So I do have a question because when you look at the graph, it says 29 acre feet.
Right, so that, it doesn't actually say the number of units.
Oh, so it's not the number of
Yeah.
units, because I'm looking here in the second and last paragraph says the release that you're asking the board to authorize the release of 58 water units for sale.
Yes.
Combined with the 219 units for a total of 277 units. So that's what we
Yes.
have available today to offer.
Well, since the December of 25, we've committed 2 units to
Yeah,
folks in
so it's
unit plans,
275.
So now it's just 2 less.
Okay,
But yes, yeah.
okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
So I do have 2 other slides I'll just go through real quick, but it's just a summary. You know, this is how we approach the water buffer model, that we take the last 12 years and subtract the highest and lowest, and that's our average water production estimate. So in 2024 and in 2025, we had these what we'll call unassigned units. So those have been included in the amount that looks, it kind of appears if I go back. So if I go back, there is a portion of that gray area that is under the virtual payment, zero use and unassigned. There's a portion of that they're actually not assigned to anybody. So technically they're unallocated, but they're still in this area of they've been released. So we've decided to put them in this gray zone. So those 219 units that have not been assigned yet are in that. So so we probably won't go out of the gray area for quite a few years based on how things have gone with the last couple of releases and offers. So just wanted to clarify that. So the unallocated amount, the 29, this is just to clarify what we're releasing. So that's the amount we are proposing that be released on top of the 219 that have already been released in previous releases. So a little complicated. It's kind of hard to explain it all. Maybe we should have another color, but it's a very fancy model that would be. So yeah, so I just that you know, the water production forecast is actually a little bit lower than last year because of the same thing that Natalie kind of explained, though people are using less water. Partially because they don't need as much for landscape, partially because so yeah, just kind of repeating in 2025, the water production did increase. We're able to produce from our supplies additional, but because we've had quite a bit of rain, district customer use has gone down. And yeah, just kind of summarizing what I've already said here. And that will, you know, if you guys did have any other suggestions about how to adjust it, but we will do this, you know, similar model annually to update you guys on the latest. And we've discussed the need to continue to do the water buffer model, even though we don't necessarily, we have plenty of water, because it kind of outlines how much water we would have in case like a big developer wanted to come in and buy a bunch of units. We'd say, okay, here's what we can really release and feel confident. So.
Thank you. Any questions?
Does the Bennett Ranch area that we voted to include, do they already have their water units secured?
Yes, so that's a 15 lot development. They have 19 units, and that was actually, they acquired those through it's an agreement where we acquired an easement.
We acquired it's a long story, but the Reader's Digest version is we traded water units, the ability to assign water units to a property owned by Dr. Sani for rights to construct a water tank on his property that's located just a little bit a little bit northwest of Vineyard Elementary School.
Okay. Right, so they have
We've
19 units.
allocated, so those have been reflected as allocated for many years.
Yeah, so they've been in the allocated but not tied in. And they are looking to do ADUs, so they would have to pay connection fees for their majority of those ADUs. If folks went ahead and.
All right, public, any questions, comments?
No questions, but I did stay just so I could compliment you on having your 20%, making your adjustments, and being a conservative staff and board that are very respectful of the citizens, that do rely on, worst case scenarios still being covered. So I was around when the water buffer first got discussed and implemented, and we didn't know when we'd ever meet the buffer, but we said it was a goal worth having. We didn't know when the wait list would ever go away, but you should all feel very proud that you no longer have a wait list. That Naveed, I think, said it had existed, I thought 20 years, but he said maybe longer. The staff probably knows. So it's wonderful that we're not keeping the property owners from developing because of water. And it's been a long haul. I was the chairperson for the Nacimiento Water Project when Templeton Community Service District was thinking about, should we buy Naci Water? So that goes way back to the days that we didn't have the water. So congratulations.
Thank you. That's been 30 years.
Oh, yeah, decades.
Well, also thank you for you being on the board and emphasizing the being conservative and developing this water buffer policy. So you were instrumental, so we appreciate it. Thank you. Coming back, any comments? Well, thank you again for updating us, and I just want to thank the previous engineer we had, Tina Mayer, and you, Jeff, for coming up with this policy and sticking, with it. And I know it's challenging. It's not easy, and and you obviously deal with it as well. There are a lot of questions and people that you have to answer. I know it takes a lot of time, but I really appreciate you guys sticking with it and getting us to the point we are. So thank you so much.
This is an action item.
Yeah.
So, okay, and then it's reassuring, or it's nice to know that we don't have to guess how many people are actually gonna use the water if they're offered. That's been really a challenge for me. So we get these crazy random requests that had no basis in reality. So.
No, thank you. All right. If no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to see if we could release these 58 water units.
So I'll make a motion that the board accept the water buffer model as presented and authorize the release of the 58 water units.
Directors Logan.
Aye.
Tyrone. Aye. Mortensen.
Aye.
Peterson.
Yeah.
And Fardonish.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Thank you for staying.
Thank you.
All right, general manager's report. Thank you for staying.
Yeah, a couple items. One, sometime late this afternoon, we lost a tree at German Park and fell into the parking lot, so we're gonna have some cleanup to do, and maybe more. I'll keep you posted.
No damage?
They don't have eyes on it, so it happened when that really heavy thunderstorm.
Where's?
German Park.
Oh, okay.
It fell into the parking lot, so we may have some, it's actually, I'm sure we weren't gonna be opening that park anyway, at least for activities, because it's not rain we received, but yeah, we have some just logistical issues to deal with. And then the other item I wanted to call to your attention or ask about is we're doing some budget prep planning now. In the old days, we held a budget workshop at before your first board meeting in the month of June. Now, we don't have 2 board meetings in the month of June, but we'd like to propose holding a budget workshop on June 2nd. That would have been your first board meeting in the month of June. And when you adopted this new schedule, it was assumed that if you were planning on special meetings that be held on the traditionally traditional board meeting dates. So I'm asking, does June 2nd work, and how early in the evening or afternoon can we start that workshop? And again, I know that the circumstances have changed. Historically, that's been something that started at like 4 o'clock, and then we try to conclude by 7 and then hold a regular meeting. We won't have that issue of holding a regular meeting, but
The only subject matter would be.
the only planned subject matter would be the budget workshop.
And we'll finish the whole thing.
It won't be limited in time if you're willing to stay longer, but if you could start earlier, then you'd have folks that, like now, some of us got to work, 15 hours or so ago. So if you're able to start at 4 or 5, that would be appreciated.
I'm flexible.
I mean, less flexible if I could make it happen at 4.
My only concern is folks graduating on June 1st.
Oh, yeah. So maybe that's,
So I have to figure out my timing, so
You'll be out of town, won't you?
yes, so we'll be in Phoenix. I don't know if I'll get back in time by June 2nd.
either way, you may not make it either
You're not-
way.
Yeah.
June 2nd's probably different for you.
Yeah, so you could pick another day. If June 2nd does not work and there's another day, again, this is a special meeting, you can hold them anytime, but I'd rather get something on the calendar than not. So you could sounds like you could hold June 2nd and maybe not have your board president.
Tuesday?
I'm concerned about moving it much later than that, because here's the problem. Here's the way this works is we try to take your comments and make changes to the budget and then produce a budget packet. And really that next Tuesday would give us like a day to do all that. So really that week
So you wanna move it later in the week?
Thursday's totally free.
the fourth is way better than the following Tuesday, I
Does
think.
that give you time to leave?
Yeah,
The 9th?
no, the 9th is
4th
too
of
late.
June.
4th of June.
Not for me.
It's a Thursday.
Yeah, is there a time
Whatever
that?
works. I would say if you could do 4, can you? do that?
Absolutely, on Thursday, I can do
Okay.
3.
3?
Oh, hey. It's fine. I can do 3. I can do 3. Any conflicts at 3?
No.
No. Thursday, June 4th, going once?
Okay.
My
Thank you.
soul, done.
3 o'clock?
1500.
Yeah, good deal.
Make sure my Uber
So we
can pick
can't-
me up.
No, I gotta go to that one.
Okay, so we're gonna plan on a special meeting at 3 PM on the 4th. Let me
Yep.
know if anything changes on anyone's schedule, but if you could just hold that time, that'd be great.
What, 3 o'clock? is it?
3 PM, June 4th, Thursday, June 4th.
All right. That is, okay, is that it?
Oh, that's it.
Okay, any questions for the general manager? Public, any question? We still have you here, that's good, hanging in there. Okay, committee reports, I don't, yeah, yeah, there's a couple of committee that we meetings. GSA is on Wednesday for a meeting and then fire on Friday. We don't have the agenda, so I'm not quite sure. Good. All right, activity update reports, engineering, any questions on that? Public, any questions? Okay. Finance, any questions on that? No. Public. Okay. Fire and emergency, any questions on that? Parks, recreation and solid waste, any questions on that? Public? No. And finally, utilities. Any questions? Okay, public, no, all right. We are done with that, and then director's report and or comments? Any questions, comments? Okay, I just wanna talk to the board, so based on our last meeting where once we changed the staffing model for the fire department, I know there were some comments regarding that we do need to look at the some options in terms of making sure that the fire department's finances in a healthy condition. So what I like to do is create an ad hoc committee and to review the fire budget and review all the other items that relate to operations for as a TCSC as a whole. The main goal would be to bring back some recommendations for the board to evaluate and not to expand the fire department anymore in terms of staffing, but at least being able to maintain what our current staffing that we've decided on.
Covering the deficit.
Covering the deficit. So I've already talked to the general manager about that. He thinks that would be a good idea to do that, and there's some ideas. So what I like to do is to do that and hopefully report back to the board and then have a robust discussion about what we want to do and with our fire department and how with the operations. So and I like to be on that committee, and as well as I was wondering if Chelsea, because you're on parks and you've committee, you've gone through a lot of the items with the parks department in terms of all the sports, all the programs and the operations, finances. So if you're okay with that, be on there so we could, along with general manager and maybe if Natalie, we could come up with some recommendations overall, see what we want to do, what we could do.
Yeah, I'd also think it's important that we also think about, I think the chief mentioned some of the updates related to the design and rebuild project, so looking at that too and see how we may pause and some savings there.
Everything, yeah. We gotta review everything because we don't want to be in deficit.
So is the goal to have something back to the board before the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something that we could implement it for the staff, so for the budget, so that was we could see the changes.
Okay.
Well, just sort of timing wise, just the finance and administration committee is expected to meet to review the preliminary draft, I think that's what we call that, April 27th. Sorry, a month.
April 27th.
Yes, April 27th, 2 p.m. So really, I think that would probably, in order for this to be effective,
Yeah, we could do something.
maybe by, you have your board meeting in April is on April 21st. So if we shoot for that, that should be done in time.
Okay, so we need to meet
Yeah, cause after that, I'm able.
okay.
When are you going to Tahiti?
Yeah, so I'll be gone 3 weeks. I'm leaving April 29th, then I'll be back May 20th.
Yes, we could do that.
At least strive for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the ad hoc committee, it's a little bit easier in terms of meeting, scheduling, because we don't have to notice it. Alright, okay, so I'm hoping come back with the recommendation to the board that we could at least narrow the gap a little bit because it's fine. Alright, try, yes, okay.
Well, I think it's not narrow, it's
eliminate the gap.
Okay, that's a.
It's a
okay.
balanced budget.
All right, that's good to know. Okay, there's gonna be some pain then.
No pain, no gain.
Okay. All right, then, if no other comments, then we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting, 9:31.